Chapter 4281. Bang! All of a sudden, a fist came and smashed Reverend Shue's wine pot. Reverend Shue was shocked. He turned his head and saw a fist that smashed his nose. He fell to the ground and looked as if he had seen a ghost. You, how did you get in? He looked like he was scared out of his wits. The blue-robed man was standing in front of him with one hand behind his back and a smile on his face. He was Lin Ling. He smiled and said, "Of course I walked in." Honored Shue almost fainted. He knew that Lin Ling walked in. But how did Lin Ling walk in? Why didn't the palace stop Lin Ling? "This palace belongs to me." Lin Ling ignored Honored Shue's dumbfounded look. He looked around the palace and nodded in satisfaction. Bullshit. Hearing this, the snow-honored cultivator was infuriated. This palace was the result of his lifetime of hard work and treasures. Bang! Unfortunately, facing Lin Ling, Honored Shue had no choice but to accept. Lin Ling had already kicked him hard in the face, breaking his teeth. Peach blossoms? I like plum blossoms. Plum blossoms are prouder. Lin Ling looked into the distance with his hands behind his back. As he spoke, the peach blossoms around him started to wither. The winter snow came, and the plum blossoms bloomed. They were not afraid of winter. "Ah, how did you control my flying snow lien heavenly palace?" Revered Snow roared in shock because the peach blossom withered, and the plum blossom blossomed. This already proved that Lin Ling could truly control the flying snow lien heavenly palace. Flying snow palace? It doesn't sound nice. Let's call it snow palace. Lin Ling ignored Honored Shue. He touched his chin and walked out of the palace without waiting for Honored Shue's resistance. Bang! When Honored Shue was thrown out, everyone was shocked. Honored Shue was so arrogant. He drank wine, enjoyed the peach blossoms and recited poems. Now he was beaten like a dog and thrown out of the palace. The difference in treatment made everyone laugh. "Go on, why aren't you reading anymore?" Sakura and the rest laughed loudly as they rubbed their hands and walked towards Revered Snow step by step. That sneer undoubtedly scared Revered Snow. He said nervously, "You can't touch me. I'm the dragon-patterned revered robe of Miaoshen's true inheritance." After that, he suddenly thought of something and immediately roared complacently, "Lin Ling, if you dare to touch me, I will make Tian Shui Great World Deity and the others die. Haha, try touching me." Obviously, he thought of the enslavement spirit formation in Tian Shui Great World Deity's body. Big brother beat him like a dog. However, Lin Ling sneered, not the slightest bit afraid. "You're crazy. Fine. You want to fight to the death? I'll fight you to the death." Revered Snow was hysterical. He controlled the enslavement barrier and wanted Tian Shui Great World Deity and the others to die in front of him. Go to hell, go to hell, go to hell. He activated the barrier and pointed at Tian Shui World Deity. He was also looking forward to seeing Lin Ling's regretful expression. However, Tian Shui World Deity stood afar, safe and sound. She even blinked her eyes and looked at him. "What's going on? Die. Why isn't there any effect?" Revered Snow was tongue-tied. His snot was also hanging out. It was an inch long. How would he know that when Sakura and the rest were attacking the palace, Lin Ling was already breaking the enslavement spirit formation? With his level, it was naturally not difficult for him. Weren't there peach blossoms before? Why aren't there any peach blossoms? When Revered Snow's snot was hanging out, there were already many figures in front of him. They surrounded him so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. All of them were rubbing their fists. "I'll let you have peach blossoms." Sakura took the lead and kicked Revered Snow's nose until it bled. Then, everyone surrounded and beat Revered Snow until the old man cried out in pain. "Lin Ling, thank you." Tian Shui Great World Deity looked at Lin Ling gratefully. "It's just a small matter." Lin Ling waved his hand casually. After pondering for a while, he suddenly pointed at Tian Shui Great World Deity. When he did that, Tian Shui Great World Deity was shocked. However, when she thought about how Lin Ling really wanted to harm her, there was no need for him to help her. Hence, she did not resist. Almost at the same time, Tian Shui Great World Deity felt a splitting headache. A mysterious power surged into her body. It was so domineering that it destroyed everything, causing her to groan. Seeing that, Princess Tian and the rest were worried. Longya suddenly gritted his teeth. Lin Ling, that's enough. Previously, I was still thanking you for saving us. So, you are actually the same as revered Snow. Both of you want to humiliate our teacher. It's just that you want to humiliate her personally. Longya. However, just as Lin Ling finished his words, Tian Shui Great World Deity recovered. She looked at Lin Ling with a red face. After pondering for a while, she immediately bowed towards Lin Ling. That was because Lin Ling had used his soul power to forcefully recover her soul power. Although she did not recover to her peak, she had recovered at least 40% of her soul power. Most importantly, Lin Ling had left behind many profound spirit forging techniques in her soul. Such forging techniques did not exist in the entire land of the 9 provinces. Lin Ling had obviously given her hope to live on. No matter. It's fate that we met. Lin Ling smiled faintly. Then he brought Yu and the rest and left. Looking at Lin Ling's back, Tian Shui Great World Deity's heart was filled with excitement. In the end she bowed again. After experiencing Lin Ling's pointers, from a certain perspective, Lin Ling could be considered half of her teacher. Furthermore, Lin Ling had saved her, and she had yet to repay him. Now she owed Lin Ling another favor. Teacher this. Longya was still confused. He couldn't help but look at Tian Shui Great World Deity and ask. He can be considered half of my teacher now. Tian Shui Great World Deity sighed and explained the entire matter. Longya was so frightened that the corner of his mouth trembled. Then, he looked at the back of the departing figure and bowed deeply, because he knew very well that if his teacher recovered her soul power, she would definitely become a world deity again. Everything that she had lost before would be regained. So powerful. He actually used his soul power to open Master's sealed soul power. Furthermore, he used his soul power to impart skills. Lin Ling's soul power has most likely reached a very high limit. Princess Tian also looked afar with admiration. Then she said curiously, Teacher, he used his soul power to touch your spirit. Wasn't this a form of spiritual communication? I've heard that soul communication is even more profound than body communication. Hearing that, Tian Shui Great World Deity's face turned red. Previously, when Lin Ling used a tyrannical method to charge into her body, it was indeed very painful. However, after that it was an indescribable feeling of joy. She never would have thought that the first time she had such a feeling in her life would actually be from Lin Ling. At that moment, Lin Ling brought Yu and the rest back to the final world. Then, a palace appeared in Lin Ling's hand, and he placed it in the courtyard. Furthermore, he imparted the method to control the palace to Yu and the rest with his soul power. With that, unless a god brought them here, grandfather and the rest would be safe and sound even if they were to hide in the palace. After doing that, Lin Ling looked to the sky and finally opened the road to seeing gods. Giant ghost, we should go to the 8 gods' heavenly palace. Chapter 4282. After a long time, Lin Ling arrived at Lei Gong's hall. Sensing Lin Ling's arrival, Lei Gong personally came out to welcome him. Beside him were the divine generals and divine paladins. Lin Ling, you're back. Sheng Yi saw Lin Ling from afar and immediately smiled. I'm back. Lin Ling nodded with a smile and walked towards Lei Gong. Lei Gong sized up Lin Ling and suddenly felt that Lin Ling's strength seemed to have improved again. However, he wasn't too sure and said, Currently the other gods are all here. You're the only one left. Yes, because the other gods have been waiting for you for a long time. They also asked Lord Lei Gong to inform you to come back. However, Lord Lei Gong refused and said that you will definitely return in a month's time. Therefore, the other gods could only wait helplessly. Sheng Yi said. He was very clear that if Lin Ling was an ordinary person, the other trial takers would have already acted out. Unfortunately, Lin Ling was one of the 8 new gods. Therefore, even if those impatient people were in a bad mood, they wouldn't dare to do anything. The purpose of this trip to the 8 gods' heavenly palace is to find the records of the 8 gods' heavenly palace. There are records of the world wills there. Therefore, we hope to find a new world will host. Lei Gong looked at Lin Ling and said. Lin Ling nodded. Currently, he knew that the world wills were Xiaoluan, the one imprisoned by the Dragon Clan, and the one he found in the 8 gods' heavenly palace. In addition to the great god of Spirit Kingdom, there were a total of 4 world wills. However, there were 10 world wills. This meant that there were still 6 world wills. 6 world wills had yet to surface. That record was incomparably crucial. Are you ready? If you are, then let's set off. After Lei Gong gave his instructions, he said to Lin Ling, "During this trip, I'll have to trouble you to take care of Sheng Yi. How about it?" "Okay." Lin Ling nodded. Immediately, everyone flew into the distance. After an unknown period of time, they stopped. To Lin Ling's surprise, the place where they gathered was actually an ancient void. There were a large number of broken ruins, fragments of continents, and rotting buildings floating everywhere. A large number of figures were standing on top of these shattered fragments. Some were sitting cross-legged, while others were looking at their swords. "Lei Gong is here." Suddenly, someone said faintly, causing the eyes of everyone in the void to light up. An ancient aura quietly permeated the air. This kind of momentum naturally had no effect on Lin Ling, but he was still secretly shocked by the hidden dragons and crouching tigers of the 4 great gods. This was because some of the people who appeared here this time had not appeared at Lei Gong's place. "So this is Lin Ling. You're quite arrogant. We've been waiting for 10 days. A cold voice drifted over, causing Lin Ling to look over. He saw a one-eyed burly man wearing a black robe with a cape behind him. He was not weak at all. Lin Ling wondered which god he was. "Everyone is here. Let's get ready to move." At this time, a voice also came over. On a broken island, a large green ox stood there, while an old man rode on top of it. He was none other than the Kirishin. Behind him were 2 people, Little South and Nyoge. These 2 were obviously the people who were going to the 8 gods' heavenly palace this time. "Get ready to move." The Titanic Crescent god and Eugene also came out one after another. They were the strongest people who competed for the spots last time. These experts were no match for Lin Ling, who was competing for first place. However, Lin Ling's eyes flashed. He didn't know why, but he felt that these people were different from last time. On the surface, however, Lin Ling couldn't detect any difference. "Open the teleportation array and go straight to the 7th floor." At this moment, the god of thunder spoke in a dignified voice. He then transmitted a message to Lin Ling. Last time in the 8 gods' celestial palace, the 4 gods finally reached the 7th floor. However, they did not complete the journey. This time, if you have the chance, rush to the 8th floor. Hearing this, Lin Ling nodded. He looked at the giant ghost on his shoulder, and found that the latter was even more excited. 8 gods' heavenly palace. Lin Ling had been there many times. Last time he reached the 5th floor. As for the 6th floor, Li Xiaoyao had been there before. As for the 7th floor, he had never been there before. However, Lin Ling had the map, so the 7th floor shouldn't be too difficult for Lin Ling. Rumble. Just as Lin Ling was thinking about it, a huge teleportation portal appeared in the void, and billowing energy emanated from it. "Lin Ling, this trip won't be simple. You must be careful." "Be careful," Sheng Yi whispered as he and Lin Ling walked side by side. He seemed to have noticed something. Lin Ling nodded. Although he sensed that Sheng Yi's strength hadn't recovered, he guessed that Lei Gong must have given him a life-saving treasure. "Big brother Lin Ling, wait for me." "Yes." In the distance, Nyoge and Little South also ran over. They had chosen to walk with Lin Ling. After all, they had fought side by side with Lin Ling in the God realm. They believed in Lin Ling's character. With this, Lin Ling had 4 people on his side. Apart from Sheng Yi, who was weaker, Little South and Nyoge were not to be underestimated. This made the other 6 people's eyes light up. Soon, the 10 of them arrived at the teleportation array. Looking at the brilliant light flowing around them, their expressions were complicated. Apart from Lin Ling, the others more or less knew about the danger of the 8 gods' heavenly palace. Moreover, they had to be wary of the Spirit Nation. In the previous trip to the 8 gods' heavenly palace, the 4 gods had encountered the people of the Spirit Nation. Bang! Bang! After an unknown period of time, when the light of the teleportation array reached its limit, a ray of dazzling light bloomed. Then it finally shrunk. By the time they reacted, the teleportation array had disappeared. Inside the teleportation array, the 10 of them seemed to have traversed through the river of time. It seemed like an eternity, but it also seemed like an instant. After a long time, when they opened their eyes, a wild aura filled the air. The air was stuffy, so stuffy that it made them feel like they were about to explode. Looking carefully, there was an ancient forest in front of them. The trees were tall and towered into the clouds. In the air, there were whirlpools formed by air currents that kept spinning. It was very surprising. This is the 7th level of the 8 gods' heavenly palace. The 10 of them appeared on top of a hill. Compared to the forest in the distance, they were as small as ants. It was as if they had come to the most ancient world. Although it wasn't their first time here, they roughly knew everything about the 7th level from the experts who came here last time. However, after seeing the 7th level with their own eyes, they were still shocked. Chapter 4283. The Ancient Era. Lin Ling's eyes flickered. "Aya, why are we here?" Suddenly someone exclaimed. They were standing on a giant skeleton. It was unknown whether it was the skeleton of an elephant or some other kind of skeleton. This skeleton was incomparably huge. If one did not look carefully, they would have thought they were standing on a mountain. After that, everyone dispersed. After all, standing on top of a giant bone would make anyone unhappy. This skeleton is a little extraordinary. But just as they left, someone stared at the skeleton with shining eyes. The skeleton was very ancient, but it was as clear as jade. Moreover, one could faintly see divine light emanating from it. Last time, a trial challenger obtained many divine bones on the 7th floor. After leaving, he exchanged them for many treasures. Could this be that kind of divine bone? I heard that this kind of divine bone is countless years old. It's a treasure even older than the era of the gods. Someone's eyes burned with desire. It's mine. But someone else took the initiative to attack. Following that, the 2 people fought to the death, each of their moves fatal. It could be seen that in the 8 gods' heavenly palace, there were no restraints from the 4 gods. Everyone was unrestrained. Rumble. The 2 people's attacks were extremely powerful. But when they landed on the surrounding ancient trees, they only caused them to sway a little. Pucci. In the end, one person was seriously injured and spat out blood. The divine bone was taken by the other person. "You've got guts." That person coldly snorted and left with his tail between his legs. He hid in the distance, not daring to be arrogant anymore. What an idiot. There are so many divine bones on the 7th floor. Why bother snatching them? At this time, a one-eyed burly man laughed disdainfully. Suddenly, he looked at Lin Ling and laughed. "Shengyi, you trash actually have the face to come here. What a waste of food. Since you're going to die here sooner or later, why don't I send you on your way?" After the burly man laughed, he walked towards Lin Ling. Without looking into the distance, he stretched out his hand and said, "Bone come." A black shadow shot out and landed in the hand of the expert who had obtained the divine bone before, sucking it over. With the divine bone in hand, countless shadows appeared around the burly man, forming a powerful force that smashed towards Shengyi. This sudden turn of events stunned Saint Guy, Little South, and the others were also very surprised. But at the critical moment, a sword appeared in front of Saint Guy and blocked the bone with a boom. The one who appeared before Saint Guai was Lin Ling. Now he had also fused his innate talent to the first stage, because he could tell that this tall and sturdy man wasn't weak at all. And he didn't seem like the person who competed for the slot last time. Hee Lin Ling. The one-eyed man maintained his posture of smashing the bone down, but he also grinned. "Your target is me, right? Why do you need to find excuses?" Lin Ling said coldly with his giant sword in front of him. Previously, he had been puzzled as to why the man had suddenly gone crazy and attacked Shengyi the moment he entered. However, he soon guessed that the attack on Shengyi was fake, and the attack on Lin Ling was real. "My name is Giant Shadow." The one-eyed man was still smiling, but his smile had turned colder, and his single eye had turned pitch black. A large number of shadows appeared behind him, and the shadows of the ancient trees and hills in the distance were all sucked in like ink into the man's back, increasing his strength. A 6th-grade divine fetus. Lin Ling instantly sensed the man's innate talent. Moreover, He was able to absorb the power of the shadows of heaven and earth. But where did this person come from? Why have I never seen him before? The others were also shocked. They couldn't understand how the one-eyed man had become so strong. Only Lin Ling pondered for a moment and finally had a guess. During the Battle of the Yellow Sea, Black Crow Old Man was also like this. His body wasn't strong, but his methods were powerful. Thinking about it, this man called Giant Shadow was the same as Black Crow Old Man. He was a god from the divine realm, who borrowed the body of another to revive. However, he didn't have any enmity with Giant Shadow. Could it be Lily Empress? Or Titanic Crescent God? In a short period of time, many thoughts flashed through Lin Ling's mind. However, at this time, the power in front of him became stronger. The power of divinity had reached almost 2,000 strands. Very strong. If Giant Shadow was a trial taker, his strength would be at the level of a new god. However, it was obvious that his identity was a divine general, so he couldn't be a trial taker. Boom! Seeing this, Lin Ling's body exploded with a powerful aura. Stage 2 Innate Talent Fusion. Get lost. Stage 2 Innate Talent had 1,500 strands of power of divinity. In addition to the terrifying divine fetus and realm essence, it immediately pushed Giant Shadow back. However, when he looked at Giant Shadow again, he still had a maniacal smile on his face. There was no trace of fear. Ka ka ka. On the contrary, the huge divine bone let out a crisp sound. Then cracks appeared on it and finally it exploded. Boom! Countless broken bones shot to the ground, so deep that they couldn't see the bottom. Ha ha ha. The one-eyed man turned into a shadow and floated back, standing on the ground and laughing loudly. So strong. Everyone stared at the laughing one-eyed man, and the respect in their eyes became even stronger. After all, they knew how strong Lin Ling was. However, who would have thought that Giant Shadow, who didn't reveal his true strength, would be able to fight against Lin Ling? Giant Shadow, I told you that Lin Ling is not simple, but you didn't believe me. At this time, a man not far away spoke. This man was very short and thin, and he stood there wearing a large armor. He gave off a very strange feeling. It's Xiao Er. As for the man, everyone naturally recognized him. He was a trial taker of the Titanic Crescent God. However, he was usually very ordinary and didn't stand out. Hee dragon, he is indeed very strong. Giant Shadow smiled and nodded, then walked towards the short armored man. One tall and one short, one thin and one strong. It was a very attractive combination. The short man had his hands behind his back, and he was still looking at Lin Ling with a strange light in his eyes. He didn't speak for a while, but for some reason, an invisible aura quietly spread out from his body. This aura was very terrifying, and it sounded like a roar, but no sound could be heard. It was extremely strange. How did Xiao Er become so strong? Noticing this, the people were even more surprised. Lin Ling, did you feel it? Giant Ghost, who was on Lin Ling's shoulder, asked softly. I felt it, but I wasn't sure at first. Now I'm a bit sure. Lin Ling nodded, but the surprise in his heart was even stronger. He wasn't surprised by the strength of the other party. After all, Lin Ling was confident that he could kill the other party in one move if he used his full strength. Instead, he was surprised to meet such a divine embryo body. Roar. A roar suddenly sounded. The short man was still standing, but his head changed, and it turned into a dragon head. Dragon. Chapter 4284. Lin Ling, you're a mixed bloodline. Don't tell me you don't plan to bow when you meet the pure bloodline of this dragon. At that moment, Xiao Er finally spoke. Dragon. That's right. He was a member of the Dragon Clan, the purest bloodline of the Dragon God. The corners of Lin Ling's mouth also cracked. He had sensed it long ago. The dragon race also had a hierarchy. Back then, the ghost dragon god he encountered in the Rainbow World was a lowly existence among the dragon race. As for the elder he encountered in the Kaiyuan River, he was the most orthodox dragon god. He could unify the entire dragon race. Lin Ling also sensed the purest bloodline of the dragon god from the short man in front of him. Although Lin Ling had the purest bloodline of the dragon clan, he was only a member of the dragon clan, and not a dragon god. Are all dragon gods this small? You're not even as tall as me, and you have to raise your head to look at me. You should be the one bowing. All right. Lin Ling put away his thoughts and said with a smile. He looked at Xiao Er with contempt. Hearing that, Xiao Er also smiled, but his smile was very hideous. Because he was not tall, he indeed had to look up at Lin Ling. However, as the Dragon Clan's crown prince, how could he suffer such humiliation? Buzz buzz buzz. However, just as he was about to unleash his full strength, suddenly, an ear-piercing sound came from the forest. It grew louder and gradually became deafening. What's happening? It feels like it's moving very fast. Everyone frowned and looked at the ancient forest far away. They saw groups of black shadows flying out from the mountain-like trees. They were mighty and everywhere they passed. It was as if life was plunged into misery and suffering. Chirp chirp. A huge cicada the size of a cow flew out from a huge tree, but it let out a panicked cry. However, it was quickly drowned by the black shadows. With a smack, a cicada shell fell to the ground in the blink of an eye. The cicada had been sucked clean. Moreover, more and more huge insects flew out from the huge tree. Some escaped the devouring of the black shadows while others did not. However, without exception, as long as they were entangled by the black shadows, they could not escape death. Whoosh! Everyone was still standing where they were, watching the rhinoceros-sized insect fly over their heads. They were all dumbfounded. Little South St. Guy, hurry up and leave. However, at this moment, Lin Ling also cried out anxiously. From the giant ghost's introduction, he knew that those were world mosquitoes, and they were incredibly terrifying existences. Back in the age of the gods, even the gods would have to retreat. However, these world mosquitoes rarely gathered in swarms, and if hundreds of them gathered together, the gods would not be able to do anything. If he was afraid, he would grab them and use them to forge treasures. But now there were more than just a few hundred of them. There were millions of them. Go! Little South had trained with Lin Ling before. She knew that if Lin Ling sounded anxious, things would be troublesome. Therefore, she took St. Guy and fled as fast as they could. The others were still in a daze. But when one of them was completely devoured, they finally reacted and quickly chased in the direction of the Little South. The person who had been devoured was the one who had been injured while fighting for the divine bone. Look, Lin Ling and the others haven't left yet. As they fled, they looked back at the same time. They saw that outside the ancient forest, 3 figures were still standing there. They were like the peak of Mount Tai, unmoving. And they were Lin Ling, Xiao Er, and the giant shadow. This also shocked the crowd at Lin Ling and the others' courage. They were not afraid of those terrifying mosquitoes. Wung wung wung. The ferocious mosquito cloud spread out, devouring everything. However, the 3 of them were still as steady as Mount Tai in the storm. Outside their bodies, powerful auras burst forth, repelling all the world mosquitoes that rushed over. Wung wung wung. And they had already lost their sense of the world. They could only hear the endless buzzing of mosquitoes in their minds. Lin Ling, come and fight. Suddenly, a roar sounded. Xiao Er attacked, transforming into a black dragon god. He opened his mouth wide and roared at Lin Ling. Lin Ling's heart thumped. His body exploded, and he transformed into a dragon. Lin Ling already had the ability to transform into a dragon. It was just that he was more used to fighting in his human form. In the billowing sea of world mosquitoes, the 2 dragons roared. It was as if they were playing with pearls, as if they were fighting for supremacy. Rumble! They overturned rivers and seas, sending all the world mosquitoes around them flying. It was terrifying. This Lin Ling is indeed very strong. The giant shadow had a serious expression. All along, he had thought that Lin Ling was only a so-so. No matter how famous he was among the 4 great gods, he did not care about him. But now he finally knew how strong Lin Ling was. After all, not many among the 4 great gods could go head-to-head with Xiao Er. This title of new god is well-deserved. Finally, the giant shadow nodded. Rumble! And Lin Ling and Xiao Er's dragon battle gradually turned from dragon form to human form. Like giants, they fought until the sky fell and the earth cracked. Xiao Er, go all out. Lin Ling, go all out. For a moment, Xiao Er was suppressed by Lin Ling. After all, Lin Ling had too many tricks up his sleeve. Other than the second stage of fusion, He also had the Bodhi testimony divine technique, 8,000 great heavenly flames, and the fourth stage of the Luai's true form, one thunder two flashes. And this was Lin Ling's strength without using the step of wisdom. Moreover, Lin Ling had been suppressing his trump card, which was the third stage of fusion, because this was reserved for Luli Empress. Look, those mosquitoes aren't rushing over. They're all surrounding Lin Ling and the rest. Far away, Little South and the rest stopped and looked at the battle in shock, because the intensity of this battle was not inferior to the battle between Lin Ling and the Crown Prince. Buzz buzz buzz. And in the ancient forest, more and more world mosquitoes appeared, blotting out the sky. Lin Ling, you have to go because the number of world mosquitoes has reached 10 billion. If you stay any longer, you'll be in danger. At this moment, the giant ghost on Lin Ling's shoulder reminded him, because these are greedy mosquitoes that have been infected by the will of the 8 gods. They're stronger than ordinary world mosquitoes. Hearing this, Lin Ling nodded. The tyrannical song in his hand clashed with Xiao Air a few more times. He had no intention of leaving. Looking at the giant shadow again, he had been standing there all this time. But after seeing the rumbling mosquito swarm, he was clearly panicking. Dragon, I'll take my leave first. He didn't dare to stay any longer. He turned into a huge shadow and flowed along the ground like water, rushing out of the mosquito swarm. Even so, he was still swallowed up quite a bit. Specks of white light appeared in his shadow. Damn, why are these mosquitoes getting crazier? This also made the giant shadow curse angrily. As for Xiao Air, he was like an injured wolf. He floated in the air and looked angrily at Lin Ling. This was because he hadn't been able to gain the upper hand in the previous clash. Instead, he had been suppressed by Lin Ling. Lin Ling, a branch dragon, humiliated him, the dragon god crown prince. In his opinion, Lin Ling was offending his superior. Chapter 4285. Bastard, why isn't this Lin Ling afraid? Could it be that he wants to die with me? I just came out from the Dragon Clan. I wanted to change the era and raise the prestige of the Dragon Clan. But who knew that the first opponent I met, Lin Ling, would make me lose face? I can't lose to him. Xiao Air kept roaring in his heart, but in the end he was afraid. He transformed into his dragon form and chased after the giant shadow. This escape undoubtedly left him with a huge shame, and it was also a shame that could not be erased. Stupid dragon! Seeing that Xiao Air had escaped, Lin Ling also sneered. Then, he did not plan to stay any longer and rushed forward crazily. However, the mosquito swarm had become incomparably huge. Even if they were very fast, it would take a lot of time to rush out of the mosquito swarm. On the distant land, Little South and the others were standing on giant trees. They used their magical powers and stared at the shocking dark clouds in the distance. Look, the giant shadow is rushing out. After a while, someone suddenly exclaimed. They saw a large shadow appear in the direction of their gaze. It then transformed into a person and immediately fled in a certain direction. This person was obviously the giant shadow. Behind him was Xiao Air. At this moment, although he had transformed into a dragon, his face was anxious and panicked, and he looked a little embarrassed. I didn't expect that Xiao Air would lose to Lin Ling. Someone immediately sighed. He knew that in the confrontation between Xiao Air and Lin Ling, Xiao Er had escaped first. However, Lin Ling is very likely to be dead. Someone else spoke. This made Little South and the others frown. They also stared into the distance. Almost at the same time, a monster finally rushed out from the distance. Its back was full of gorgeous tentacles, but its body was full of clanking potholes. It was bitten by the world mosquitoes. He was Lin Ling. Seeing this, Little South and the others clenched their fists in excitement. The others were terrified because they could not stay in the ferocious mosquito swarm for 15 minutes. However, not only did Lin Ling stay for an hour, he was still alive. However, just as Lin Ling was about to rush out of the mosquito swarm, a sudden change occurred. A woman in a black robe strangely appeared in front of Lin Ling. At the same time, she stretched out her palm and pointed it at Lin Ling from afar. On her palm, a dazzling light wave appeared. She had gathered 2,000 strands of divine power. Normally, this level of divine power would not be able to hurt Lin Ling. However, Lin Ling was now that he was escaping from the world mosquito's encirclement. The situation was very urgent. It's her Nian Wire. When Little South saw the woman, he was shocked. That was because the woman was a trial taker from Eugene. Her strength was also ordinary. Like Juing, she did not reveal her strength. However, at that moment, she could erupt with 2,000 strands of divine power. That was too terrifying. Something's not right. The people who entered the Eight Gods' heavenly palace this time do not seem to be the same people from before. Beside him, Nyoga frowned. Previously it was Juing and Xiao Er. Now it was Nian Wire. Everything was strange. Lin Ling, I'm sorry. At that moment, the woman floated in the air and said expressionlessly. After she finished speaking, her palm released a huge light wave that blasted toward Lin Ling. At that moment, Lin Ling stopped rushing forward. He looked at the woman coldly and said, "Why? You don't need to know the reason." However, the woman shook her head. After she finished speaking, she turned around and left. She looked as if she was doing something very normal. "Do you know that doing this will get you killed?" Lin Ling said coldly, allowing the mosquito swarm behind him to engulf him. Ha ha ha. Unfortunately, the woman roared with laughter. She seemed to be a delicate woman, yet her laughter was filled with heroic spirit. Of course, it carried a wisp of ridicule and disdain, because as far as she was concerned, Lin Ling would definitely die if he was drowned by the swarm of mosquitoes. Kill me? What a joke. Buzz. Buzz. She did not even look behind her. However, everything was as she had guessed. The huge mosquito swarm had completely engulfed Lin Ling. After all, Lin Ling had to fight against the woman's divine power. This short period of time was enough for the world mosquitoes to arrive. Brother Lin Ling. In the distance, Little South and the others shouted anxiously. However, just as Lin Ling was about to be engulfed, they saw Lin Ling say to them, "Go." What he meant was that he wanted them to leave first. Brother Lin Ling. Little South's eyes were moist. However, he still followed Lin Ling's instructions and left with Shengyi and the others. At this moment, the huge shadow and Xiao Er appeared not far away. They looked at the mosquito swarm that was engulfed, and their pupils constricted. In their eyes, the huge mosquito swarm was like a divine beast that opened its huge mouth and engulfed the heavens and the earth. These world mosquitoes, if placed in the land of the 9 states, would be engulfed by them. Unless the 4 great deities take action, who can subdue them? The huge shadow said anxiously. Xiao Er sneered. Instead, he looked at Nian Wire, who flew back and said indifferently, "This woman is so ruthless. She attacked at the crucial moment and took Lin Ling's life. It seems that father was right. No matter what era it is, strength is everything. However, sometimes schemes can be used to defeat the strong, turning defeat into victory. Let's go." Then, the two did not stay any longer and ran into the distance. At this moment, in the terrifying cloud of world mosquitoes, a figure kept retreating. The densely packed world mosquitoes flooded over at the same time. Lin Ling, you must rush out of the world mosquitoes immediately, because the world mosquitoes will emit sound waves that will interfere with your direction. If you are trapped inside, unless you are completely engulfed, you will never be able to get out. The huge ghost's voice sounded among the buzzing of mosquitoes, with a hint of anxiety. However, Lin Ling had already shot down from the sky and landed on the ground. With his hands behind his back, he said indifferently, "Mere world mosquitoes want to hurt me, Lin Ling." After he finished speaking, an extremely terrifying soul power erupted. It was like an endless wave that surged out in all directions. Crash! Wherever the soul power passed, a large number of world mosquitoes' soul power was forcefully shattered and fell to the ground like rain. This guy! The huge ghost witnessed this scene with its own eyes and was tongue-tied. It was obvious that Lin Ling's current strength had long exceeded its imagination. The 4,000 years of bitter cultivation back then was not in vain. Until now, Lin Ling had dominated the void of the 9 states. However, he had never used his full strength, because there was no opponent that could make him use his full strength. Step of wisdom, Lin Ling said softly. Like a brilliant heavenly power, a huge soul circle appeared around his body and protected him firmly. When the world mosquitoes came close, they were all sealed, or they were forcefully shocked to death. Just like that, Lin Ling walked forward step by step. The direction he was heading in was obviously another direction. Chapter 4286. If Xiao Air and the giant shadow were here, they would definitely be scared pale. This was because Lin Ling clearly did not use his full strength in the battle with them. In fact, he did not even use 70% of his strength. As for Nian Wire, if she saw Lin Ling walking in the world mosquito cloud like it was his backyard, she would definitely regret her previous actions, because that move of his had completely destroyed her path of survival. As time passed, the nearby world mosquito no longer dared to approach Lin Ling. They treated Lin Ling as a dead object and avoided him. Then, they turned into an ocean and flew into the distance. After a long time, Lin Ling's figure appeared on the ground. He put away the stare of wisdom and looked into the distance. Next, he took out the map of the 7th level of the 8 gods' heavenly palace. Lei Gong told me to protect St. Guyi. However, with Little South and Nyogu around, St. Guyi should not be in any danger. After all, their target is me. On the contrary, St. Guyi will be in danger if he follows me. Now I'll follow the map to find the records. Oh right, the giant ghost, you're here. Did you notice something on the 7th level? Yes. Lin Ling looked at the map and said to the giant ghost on his shoulder. I can sense that evil ghost is here too. Yes. The giant ghost floated up and looked into the distance. Then he said word by word. This is interesting. Yes. Hearing this, Lin Ling was not afraid. Instead, he revealed an expectant smile. Looking at the map in his hand, he realized that the map recorded that after passing through the ancient forest, they would reach another area. That seemed to be another core area of the 7th level. The central area was drawn in blood on the map, indicating the importance of this area. Last time, the 4 gods allowed people to enter the 7th level. However, they did not explore the entire area. Therefore, it is not certain that no one has been to the central area. After all, on the map, there is an underground palace on the other side. I think they went to that underground palace last time. Lin Ling guessed. Lin Ling, I have a feeling that evil ghost and the rest have gone to the 8th level. The giant ghost sensed and said, also, it has sensed my arrival. Then let's go to the central area. Lin Ling immediately moved in the direction indicated on the map. Crash. This ancient forest was very large. Lin Ling felt as if he was an ant as he walked. The ground was covered with fallen leaves the size of boats. Below these leaves, one could faintly see divine bones that were as white as jade. There are a lot of divine bones. Let's collect them first. Lin Ling summoned the evil ghost jellyfish and continuously moved the divine bones hidden underground. Soon after, his harvest also increased. In the end, he carried a huge elephant leg bone and majestically moved forward. Chapter 4287. Could it be that the old man looked like one of the 8 gods? Lin Ling's heart skipped a beat. He looked at the giant ghost again, only to see the giant ghost floating there, staring at the shadows. It was stunned and very excited. However, the shadows, which had just been sent flying, were now rushing over with the speed of 100,000 worlds. Leave this place. Leave. Lin Ling knew that he could not fight against those shadows. The most important thing was to leave this place. he saw a huge claw reaching for the giant ghost. However, the giant ghost was still in a daze, as if it had seen its master. "Giant ghost, leave!" Lin Ling shouted anxiously. Unfortunately, the giant ghost was still indifferent. Seeing that the giant ghost was about to be in danger, Lin Ling's eyes narrowed. Finally, a low voice sounded for the first time in the 9 prefectures void. "Third stage. Leave!" Boom. 7 different forces rushed into the sky. The 7 divine embryos collided violently, destroying the ancient trees in a radius of 10,000 miles. If one looked from afar, they could see 7 different colored lights illuminating the world. Swoosh! In the open space, a figure stood up like an ancient god. Almost at the same time, the shadow's claw appeared in front of the giant ghost. Xiao! However, a hand quickly appeared on the giant ghost's neck. It grabbed it by the neck and disappeared. With a rumble, the claw swept across and cut open the ground. However, the giant ghost was already gone. "Lin Ling, leave!" The giant ghost finally reacted. It turned its head in disbelief and saw a man holding its neck and flying forward with a cold expression. His speed had reached the terrifying speed of 150,000 worlds. "Lin Ling, you still have some tricks up your sleeve. Leave!" The giant ghost's voice trembled. After all, this was the first time Lin Ling had used the 3rd stage innate talent fusion in the 9 prefectures void. Therefore, it was also the first time it had seen it. However, what shocked the giant ghost was that Lin Ling didn't change at all after the 3rd stage of talent fusion. There were no flames or lightning, and there were no tentacles behind him. However, the more ordinary Lin Ling was, the more terrifying he was. No, his clothes have turned gray. Perhaps it was due to the influence of the power, or perhaps it was due to some other reason. But the giant ghost discovered that Lin Ling's blue robe had already turned gray. God! Gray-robed Lin Ling? The giant ghost had a feeling that in the current 9 states, other than the people it did not know, only the 4 great gods could suppress Lin Ling. Whoosh! Whoosh! As Lin Ling crazily rushed forward, the shadow behind him was also hot on his heels. Rumble! Lin Ling opened up a path in front and directly crashed into the huge ancient trees, creating a huge hole in the huge trees. Because the huge trees were too big, it was a waste of time to go around the huge trees. However, this time, just as Lin Ling broke through the giant tree, a cry sounded from the tree hole. Soon after, a huge claw swept towards him. Clang! Lin Ling was expressionless as he slashed out with his sword. Whoosh! The shadow was swept away by Lin Ling's sword. This sword also shocked the giant ghost, because this was the most powerful Lin Ling it had seen since it met Lin Ling. After sweeping away the shadow, Lin Ling's expression was still cold because he sensed that the shadow was not injured at all. Moreover, there was more than one shadow that represented grief. If he was entangled, even Lin Ling would have a hard time. Whoosh! Without stopping, Lin Ling rushed towards the ancient forest, as if he had traveled through time and space. This rush crossed mountains and ridges, as if Quafu was chasing the sun. If this was the 9 provinces, with this speed, 2 hours would be enough to cover the entire north region. However, this ancient forest was still not the end. The time is getting shorter and shorter. Lin Ling's long hair was blown up by the wind, but he also let out a low voice. What time? The giant ghost was still being held by Lin Ling by the neck like a little chick, but it also let out a suspicious voice. The time for the 3rd stage of innate talent fusion. Lin Ling finally turned to look at the giant ghost and said word by word. At most, I can last for 3 more incense sticks of time. Lin Ling clearly did not have complete control over the 3rd stage of innate talent fusion. It consumed too much soul force. Moreover, if not for the fact that his soul force was stronger than when he was in the kingdom of eternity, he would have already lost the fusion state. 3 incense sticks of time. The giant ghost's expression also turned ugly. Whoosh! 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 Time quietly passed. 3 incense sticks of time quietly approached. Lin Ling's figure began to change. His aura receded like a tide, causing the giant ghost to panic. Are we going to die here? Lin Ling was still flying, but he also felt that his strength was constantly draining. His 150,000 world speed continued to weaken. Instead, a large number of cries came from behind him. Those shadows were getting closer and closer. I thought that after my return, apart from the 4 gods, I would be invincible. Who knew that I would lose my life in an ancient forest? Lin Ling gritted his teeth and said when he sensed the approaching shadows. Only now did he realize that he had been too confident in the past. Lin Ling there. Suddenly, the giant ghost pointed ahead and said. The originally flat ground began to turn into a cliff. Moreover, the rumbling sound of water gradually came deafening. This also caused Lin Ling's eyes to burn. His desire to live grew stronger and stronger. Where he looked, he could vaguely see a black waterfall. The mysterious black liquid smashed down from the sky. It was very majestic. However, Lin Ling's speed had become very slow. On the contrary, the shadows behind him were getting closer and closer. Jump into the waterfall, and you still have a chance to live. Lin Ling, quick, quick, quick. Life and death were on the line, so the giant ghost's voice became more and more anxious. Quick, quick, quick. Lin Ling also roared. But at this time, 3 shadows came from behind, 3 claws sweeping out. Lin Ling. The giant ghost couldn't help but angrily shout, his voice full of worry. Step of wisdom. But at this time, Lin Ling's eyes turned red. He released the last bit of his soul force. After using it, Lin Ling felt a splitting headache. Rumble. In the end, Lin Ling could only feel 3 powerful attacks landing on his body, but they also sent him flying forward. Finally, he flew off the cliff and was submerged by the black waterfall. Rumble, rumble, rumble. In his ears, there was only a deafening sound. Then Lin Ling fell unconscious. In the crazy waves, the giant ghost held Lin Ling's clothes in its mouth, not letting Lin Ling sink to the bottom. Then they drifted with the waves. This waterfall was very, very high. After an unknown amount of time, Lin Ling finally fell into the water. Then, he was pushed by the current and gradually reached the shore. Oh! After a long time on the shore, Lin Ling slowly opened his eyes. The first thing he heard was the sound of rushing water. He couldn't help but look back. He saw himself lying on the shore, the pitch-black water flowing forward like a river yu-yu. I made it. Immediately, Lin Ling sneaked over as well. Then he stood at the foot of a hill and looked into the distance. In the distance there was a vast grassland. A large number of people were gathered there, and an intense battle was taking place. Looking carefully, they seemed to be divided into 3 camps. One of the camps was led by a woman, and they were all extremely powerful. Moreover, other than that woman, the others were all tall and slender, and their arms reached to their knees. It was very strange. Looking at the other camp, they were dressed in black armor, and their bodies were hidden in the armor. They were led by a young man. The people in these 2 camps had a common characteristic, and that was that their skin was very dark. What a strange person! He is not from the spirit nation. Lin Ling could not help but be surprised. Lin Ling, did you notice that the people leading the 2 camps have unfathomable power suppressed in their bodies? However, for some reason, that power seems to be sealed, so they cannot use it. The giant ghost beside him said. After being reminded by the giant ghost, Lin Ling also began to investigate. He found that the hidden jie qi in their bodies was indeed unfathomable, and they seemed to be experts of the deity realm. However, at least 60% of that power was sealed, so it was only the strength of the peak martial god realm. Fight! Fight! While Lin Ling was observing, the young man had already taken the initiative to attack. He held a huge ball in his hand. The ball was bound by chains and was 2 meters wide. It was huge, but it was extremely light in his hand. Boom! Like an iron ball, the huge ball smashed down, and the sky immediately darkened, then became bright again. That kind of power was undoubtedly terrifying. That person's strength is not weak, he is even stronger than Xiao Air. Lin Ling was secretly shocked. After all, if it was Xiao Air, Lin Ling could defeat him with a second fusion. But to defeat the person from before, it was a little difficult. Under the young man's attack, the people he brought also attacked. They rode on the huge black armored horses, making some unknown sounds and rushed forward. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. However, the person they besieged was not weak either. His body was hazy with wind and rain, making it impossible for people to see his appearance. However, with a point of his finger, the wind and rain blew, making it difficult for the huge black armored horses to get close. What a familiar feeling, giant ghost. Don't you feel that the power that those people are using seems to have been seen somewhere before? Lin Ling stared at the huge black armored horses and frowned. I have the same feeling, and what they said seems to have heard it before. The giant ghost nodded. Then, the two of them looked at each other, and their eyes instantly lit up. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Wasn't that the sound of the underworld cavalry rushing out when Lin Ling opened the World Massacre Order? Could it be that those were people from the underworld? Thinking of this, Lin Ling and the giant ghost were both shocked. So they are people from the underworld. No wonder that whoosh 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 is so familiar. The giant ghost nodded in realization. Why did the underworld also come to the Eight Gods' heavenly palace? Could it be that there is something in the Eight Gods' heavenly palace that they want? Lin Ling pondered, and suddenly his eyes lit up. Could it be for the Eight Gods' record? The Eight Gods' record recorded the new world will host body, and to the underworld, only this kind of treasure could attract them. What is the relationship between the world will and the underworld? Lin Ling really did not understand the purpose of the underworld, but his eyes stared at the person shrouded in wind and rain, and suddenly smiled. That is Treasure God Namwufengyu. He never thought that Treasure God Namwufengyu would appear here. Go help him. Immediately, Lin Ling did not hesitate and rushed forward. At this moment, the sky was filled with wind and rain, sealing off a part of the world, looking very domineering. No matter how the black armored horses rushed over, they could not get close to the world. Whoosh 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 whoosh, this person is so strong, who is it? The young man attacked for a long time without success, and finally faced the mysterious person directly. Chapter 4289. Soul Sealer of the Underworld, you're useless. At this moment, the woman who had been watching from the side said disdainfully. Then, she signaled with her eyes, and the experts behind her attacked Treasure God Namwufengyu. Rumble. Powerful nether energy came and drowned everything. Dark clouds rolled and covered the sky. However, after the dark clouds passed, the world ahead was still stormy. Within it, the old man's figure could be vaguely seen, and he was still unharmed. Namwu, you're useless too. In my opinion, we should work together. Seeing this, the young man sneered. He didn't waste any more words. A token appeared in his hand, and he muttered something. Rumble. Behind him, an ancient bronze door appeared silently. Then it slowly opened, and wisps of dense nether chi continuously gushed out. This time, you're still not dead. The sneer on the young man's face deepened. Almost at the same time, the underworld cavalry finally charged out of the huge bronze gate behind him. They were majestic and tall. If one were to look carefully, they would only be able to see that they were wearing black armor. There was no one to be seen. These nether riders were obviously real nether riders. Underworld Massacre Order. It seems like you're really from the underworld. Seeing this, an old voice finally sounded from the world of wind and rain. It seemed to have confirmed something. So what if you know? Old man die. The young man didn't care about treasure god Nanwufinyu at all. He waved his hand, and countless nether riders charged into the world of wind and rain. In his opinion, once the Underworld Massacre Order was issued, the old man would definitely die. The Underworld Massacre Order was so terrifying that even the martial god of Duan lineage had to avoid it. It was indeed terrifying. However, he was facing treasure god Nanwufinyu, a real god. Humph! An extremely dignified cold snort was heard, and the world that was swaying in the wind and rain suddenly turned into a violent gale. Swoosh! The seemingly simple raindrops became as sharp as arrows under the fierce wind, and they were mixed with the power of the gods. When they landed on the bodies of the netherworld cavalry that were charging over, they destroyed everything as easily as breaking through dry weeds. Dang! Dang! The black nether riders were all pierced and turned into dust. However, what was surprising was that these underworld cavalry seemed to be souls. After their armor was destroyed, they still couldn't see the person wearing the armor. In the blink of an eye, the netherworld cavalry that had charged out of the bronze gate had been completely annihilated. Looks like I've underestimated you. You must be a god. Seeing this, the young man did not reveal a panicked expression. Instead, he spoke in a serious tone, because he was very clear that the underworld cavalry that rushed out of the bronze gate was different from the underworld cavalry that he brought out. The underworld cavalry that came out of the gate had a might that did not fear anything. World essence and divine energy could not harm them. Only the divine steps could. In the current Jojo void, there were very few people who possessed the power of the steps of the gods, unless they were gods. Since you know, why aren't you running? In the sky, the wind and rain dissipated, revealing treasure god Nanwufinyu with his hands behind his back. Old man, if my power had not been sealed, you might not be my match. The young man sneered without any fear. At the same time, he stretched out his finger and shook it as he said, although you are very powerful, you can't kill me. The only one who can kill me is Lord Underworld God. Once I find a new body, my strength will be unsealed again. At that time, you will be able to kill me. When that time comes, you will know how powerful I am. Is that so? Treasure god Nanwufinyu nodded. Suddenly, he looked to the other side and smiled. There is a decent body over there. Why don't you try to seize it? He was pointing at Lin Ling, who was charging over. Obviously, with his strength, he had already sensed Lin Ling's arrival, and was surprised that Lin Ling, this brat, had come here. Hearing this, the young man looked in Lin Ling's direction. Then, his eyes lit up, and he rubbed his chin to size him up. A decent body. You are a level 9 martial god, and can contain a lot of my power. Moreover, you have a divine fetus, and your level is not low. Ha, this body is not bad. I've searched high and low for it, only to find it without any effort. As he spoke, his entire body erupted with powerful realm essence, and nether chi surged out. Brat, I want your body. If you have any unfulfilled wishes, I will fulfill them for you. In the young man's opinion, Lin Ling's body already belonged to him. The soul sealer of the underworld is quite lucky to have found a decent body as soon as he arrived. The woman in the distance said with jealousy. She knew that people from the underworld like them had to seize a human's body if they wanted to display their strength. The stronger the body, the more strength they could display. The underworld chi surged toward Lin Ling like a cloud, trying to occupy Lin Ling's body. At the same time, Lin Ling smirked when he saw the young man's attack. To be honest, if the young man could unleash his full strength, Lin Ling would have no choice but to use the third stage innate talent fusion. Unfortunately, the young man could not use much strength at the moment. He estimated that he could only use 40% of his strength. Already. Seize my body. Lin Ling used the second stage innate talent fusion and lunged forward. It was as if they were going to fight head-on. His action undoubtedly shocked the woman in the distance. She wondered if Lin Ling had lost his mind. The young man was startled. Then he laughed wildly. You must be tired of living. Instead of running away, you chose to fight me head-on. The dark cloud that he had transformed into quickly engulfed Lin Ling. However, just as he was about to devour Lin Ling's body, a sacred and ancient power suddenly suppressed him. It was like the power of a god, and it actually sealed all of his dark cloud. Steps of the gods. The young man was stunned. How could a random person have the steps of the gods? He, who was sealed by the steps of wisdom, lost the ability to resist. Although he was in the dense underworld cloud, a sword quickly slashed toward him and struck his body. Then, a figure was sent flying and smashed into the grassland like a cannonball. Boom! The entire prairie shook, and the experts of the underworld were all shocked. The woman in the distance was so shocked that her mouth was wide open. The underworld soul sealer, he was sent flying? And by a nameless human brat? This guy really doesn't give face. Only treasure god Nanwufengyu was not surprised. He knew that Lin Ling's strength was not weak. Even he would need to use 60% of his strength to defeat Lin Ling. Rumble. Lin Ling told treasure god Nanwufengyu his idea. Treasure god Nanwufengyu had been here before, so he nodded with a smile. The two flew through the sky and chatted as they walked. Grandpa treasure god, what do you think the underworld people are doing here? I think they're here for the world will host. But the strange thing is, why would the underworld god be interested in the world will host? Treasure god Nanwufengyu rubbed his chin. He couldn't understand. However, Lin Ling glanced around, because he knew that the will of the world was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. What was left in the 9 states was only the weakest part. The truly powerful part was in another void. Perhaps the gaze of the god of the underworld was the true will of the world. The funny thing was, the underworld god didn't know that the world will wasn't something he could control. Once it exploded, even the gods of the primordial era couldn't stop it. We're here. At this time, treasure god Nanwufengyu reminded Lin Ling. Lin Ling looked ahead and saw that there were ruins. There were mottled walls all around, and a cracked stone tablet sat on the ground. There were many complicated runes carved on it. That's it. Treasure god Nanwufengyu pouted at the stone tablet. Lin Ling nodded and walked toward the stone tablet. The stone tablet was about 2 meters tall and was made of limestone. Because of the passage of time, many of the runes on it had fallen off. Lin Ling couldn't understand these runes, so he looked at the giant ghost on his shoulder. The giant ghost floated over and stopped in front of the stone tablet. It looked at it, and then secretly sent a message to Lin Ling. Lin Ling listened quietly. His expression changed constantly, and finally his pupils shrank. Boom! Then Lin Ling punched out and destroyed the record of the 8 gods. Lin Ling this. Treasure god Nanwufengyu was shocked. This host is very important. The fewer people who know about it, the better. Lin Ling turned and looked at treasure god Nanwufengyu with a serious expression. Treasure god Nanwufengyu was stunned, but immediately nodded. He couldn't understand the runes on the record of the 8 gods, so he could only guess. But in the end, it was only a rough guess. He knew that this host was related to lightning. Lin Ling, on the other hand, clearly knew better than him who the host was. Lin Ling was still looking ahead, his eyes flashing. Obviously, he was still shocked by the news. Treasure god Grandpa, has anyone else seen this stone tablet? Lin Ling suddenly asked. When I came here, I was alone. When I first arrived, I felt a mysterious aura. It was darkness, but it disappeared very quickly. I'm not sure if he saw this stone tablet. Treasure god Nanwufengyu recalled. Hearing this, Lin Ling's expression became even more serious. The giant ghost also floated back. Only it could understand the record of the 8 gods, so it knew who the 5th world will was. Lin Ling, are you okay? Therefore he asked out of concern. I'm fine. Lin Ling's eyes flashed and gradually calmed down. He thought of Xiaoluan, the host sealed in the Dragon Valley, the host controlled by the 4 great gods that he had never seen before, and the great god of Spirit Nation. These were the 4 main hosts that he knew of so far, plus the 5th one he knew. It seemed that the 10 hosts were about to surface. For some reason, Lin Ling had a feeling that among the 10 hosts, one of them would change the entire era. The 10 hosts might even combine and become the strongest world will. The hosts of the world will are classified by color. Currently, other than the great god of Spirit Kingdom, I don't know what level the other hosts are. even Xiaoluan. Time passed quietly. In the end, Lin Ling stopped guessing. Chapter 4291. I'll help you when the time comes. Lin Ling smiled and nodded. Nan Wufingyu was very grateful. Lin Ling wasn't weak now. With his help, he could get twice the result with half the effort. There are people outside. Let's go take a look. Suddenly, Nan Wufingyu's eyes lit up as he looked at the ancient city wall in the distance. After his reminder, Lin Ling noticed something as well. And only now did he notice that an intense battle had unknowingly started outside the ruins. Moreover, Lin Ling recognized that group of people. They were the trial challengers. They obviously hadn't been here for long before they started fighting outside the ruins. The reason was that outside the ruins, an extremely mysterious saber was unearthed. Everyone was fighting over the saber. Enemies often cross paths. Nan Wufingyu, after we're done here, I'll go to the 8th level with you. Lin Ling turned around and said to Nan Wufingyu. Then he rushed out of the ruins. Now outside the ruins, several figures were gathered there. They all exploded with powerful realm essence tit for tat. They were divided into 3 groups. One group was led by Xiao Er. Another group was led by a mysterious woman, Nianwei Er. And the last group was Little South's group. However, Little South's group was ignored. In the center, an object that looked like a saber and a sword sat on the ground. Its surface was mottled with rocks. It looked like a statue, but everyone could feel a force that couldn't be underestimated. It was emitting a force that couldn't be underestimated. It's mine. Everyone stared at the saber and sword. Finally, someone couldn't help but make a move. The one who made a move was a giant shadow. A giant shadow shot towards the statue and moved all the shadows around it. Then, a giant shadow's arm suddenly grabbed the saber's hilt and wanted to pull it out. Giant shadow, how dare you? Seeing this, many people cursed angrily. Now they had almost forgotten about the record of the 8 gods. They only wanted to obtain that precious treasure. However, when the giant shadow wanted to pull out the saber didn't move at all. It was as if it was rooted in the ground. One had to know that the giant shadow's strength could easily destroy 10,000 realms. However, it couldn't move the saber at all. How strange. The people who were previously furious all stopped and looked over with furrowed brows. Long before they entered this place, they had already sensed the mysterious power emitted by the sword and blade. This power was very strange. It looked like world essence, yet it didn't seem like divine power. Yet it didn't seem like it either. It was a power that exceeded their imagination. That was why they were eyeing this treasure covetously. Giant shadow, move aside. Let me try. Seeing that the treasured blade could not be pulled out, Xiao Er also flew over. His right arm shook and his sleeve turned into fine powder. A huge dragon claw appeared and suddenly grabbed the blade. Ha! He shouted angrily. Rumble! The earth began to tremble as if an earthquake was occurring. In the distance, the earth began to tumble like giant waves. However, everything around the treasured saber remained motionless. How is this possible? This time Xiao Er was also shocked. What? Even with Xiao Er's strength, he can't pull out this blade. The other trial challengers were also shocked. Get lost. This blade already has an owner. How can trash like you obtain it? At this moment, an indifferent voice came from afar. Then under everyone's gaze, 2 figures slowly walked over. The one behind was an old man. As for the one in front, it was Lin Ling. Lin Ling, you're not dead. Seeing Lin Ling walking over, everyone was dumbfounded. This was because they clearly remembered that Lin Ling was already drowned by the world mosquitoes. Why isn't he dead? The mysterious woman's expression turned ugly, and there was a hint of unwillingness. This was because when she framed Lin Ling told her that she would regret it. At that time, she treated it as a joke. However, looking at it now, she was indeed regretting it. Lily Empress lied to me. Lin Ling was able to escape from the world mosquitoes. His strength is definitely not as simple as it seems. Sigh. The woman quietly took a step back and was already planning to escape. However, under Lin Ling's cold gaze, she did not dare to act rashly. When they looked at Xiao Er again, they all narrowed their eyes. They could not understand how Lin Ling could still be alive. Without a doubt, Lin Ling's appearance cast a shadow over the trial challengers' hearts. Big brother Lin Ling. Big brother. Lin Ling. Big brother. Little South, and the others were obviously very happy as they ran towards Lin Ling. When Lin Ling saw that Shengyi was fine, he also felt relieved. Then, he led the others towards the treasured blade. Get out of the way. Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough, big brother? As Lin Ling walked, he looked at Second Master Xiao with a disdainful gaze. That contemptuous voice undoubtedly made Second Master Xiao very angry. However, he had fought with Lin Ling before, and knew that Lin Ling was very strong. Thus he did not act out for the time being. Instead he sneered and said, "You want this saber? It's not that I'm looking down on you, but this saber cannot be pulled out. If you don't believe me, you can try." After he finished speaking, he simply turned around and left. Xiao Er actually gave up the treasured blade? No, Xiao Er cannot pull out the treasured blade. Lin Ling cannot succeed either. So Xiao Er wants to embarrass Lin Ling as well. That saber is very extraordinary. Lin Ling should not be able to pull it out. The trial challengers were all stunned at first, but they quickly reacted. Now they wanted to see what qualifications Lin Ling had to be so arrogant. Swoosh! The sword landed in front of their feet, giving them a fright. Then their faces turned ashen. They wanted to retort, but they did not dare. After all, Lin Ling was the strongest challenger among them. After Lin Ling left the four gods, he was even more unscrupulous than them. He used cold words to threaten them. This kind of dominance was not only targeted at the other challengers, but also at Xiao Er and the giant figure. It made them feel like they had been humiliated. After all, with their backgrounds, they had always been the ones threatening others. However, due to Lin Ling's strength, the giant figure knew that unless he regained his strength, it would be better not to go against Lin Ling's will. Therefore he said casually, "Okay, we won't laugh. We're just reminding Shengyi." Bang! Rumble! However, just as he finished speaking, the earth suddenly shook, as if the earth was quaking and the mountains were shaking. What's happening? Everyone was shocked, including Lin Ling. After all, Lin Ling had tested it before. No matter what kind of attack landed on the treasured sword, it would not shake. However, it was different now. Look, the sword is rising. Someone pointed at Shengyi, their jaws dropping to the ground. Because at this moment, Saint Yi was holding the ancient blade with both hands, and was slowly pulling it out. The cracked soil on the blade was like a bamboo shedding its skin, and was falling off bit by bit. Clang! After the soil fell off, a blinding light shocked the entire 7th floor. Even someone as strong as Lin Ling subconsciously closed his eyes. His soul power sensed a majestic force surging around him. This was the steps of God. The steps of God seemed to be the power of yin and yang. After it bloomed, it formed a great law that placed Lin Ling and the others in a mysterious world. Eastern Emperor Tai, Yuanshi's sword. The aged voice also rose in everyone's hearts, causing many people to feel a sense of reverence in their hearts. Yuanshi's sword. Lin Ling closed his eyes and muttered to himself. Eastern Emperor Tai. This sword belonged to Eastern Emperor Tai. One had to know that Eastern Emperor Tai was most famous for the Eastern Emperor bell. This was the first time Lin Ling had heard of the Yuanshi's sword. Right, Shengyi is the bloodline of Eastern Emperor Tai. Is that the reason? A guess appeared in Lin Ling's mind. While he was guessing, the dazzling light gradually disappeared. In the end, Lin Ling opened his eyes and scanned the area in front of him. Cracks appeared on the ground, like a dry paddy field without water. Shengyi stood on the ground, holding the sword with one hand and caressing it with the other. He seemed to be examining the sword that he had just obtained. Seeing this, Lin Ling was happy for Shengyi. Now that Shengyi had obtained the treasured sword, Shengyi was no longer the trash that everyone said he was. Shengyi, you actually obtained that sword? The others reacted one after another, their eyes filled with jealousy. Shengyi, let me take a look at the sword. The giant figure walked towards Shengyi, saying that he wanted to take a look, but in reality, he wanted to snatch the sword. In his opinion, a trash like Shengyi had no right to obtain the sword. Lin Ling saw this and sneered. He didn't make a move, because he knew that the giant figure was going to be at a disadvantage. After all, he could sense that the Yuanshi sword wasn't hiding the power of divinity, but the steps of divinity. Although the steps of divinity weren't as high level as Lin Ling's steps of wisdom, it was offensive. On the other hand, Lin Ling's steps of wisdom had no offensive power. As expected, Sheng Yi ignored the giant figure and continued to examine the sword in his hand. Suddenly he raised the sword. A blinding light bloomed, and the steps of divinity filled the air. On my eyes! The giant figure couldn't block it at all. It was as if his entire body was being corroded. After being illuminated by the light, his body began to melt. Chapter 4293. Bang! Sheng Yi held his saber at a slanted angle and walked towards the giant figure like a giant. The giant figure was blinded and could only sense Sheng Yi's approach. Then a scorching hot saber landed on his neck. Don't kill me, Sheng Yi. Spare me, spare me. Spare me. The giant figure cried out anxiously. He could feel death approaching. For the sake of the four gods, I'll spare your worthless life. Sheng Yi said coldly. This was the first time he had released his domineering aura, after failing to ascend to godhood. It had been 100 years since he had last used it. This made him very excited. He felt as if his suffering was over, and the sweetness was about to come. Although he had yet to recover his strength, with this saber, he had once again regained his position among the four great gods. Thank you for sparing my life. Thank you for sparing my life. Thank you. The giant shadow cried out in relief. But at this time, a blinding beam of light shot out, passing through his eyes. On my eyes, Sheng Yi said. Sheng Yi had blinded the giant figure's eyes with his saber. This blindness was permanent. I don't know if you're a real trial taker or a fake, but I'll spare your life for now. If I find out you're a fake, I'll kill you first. Scram! Scram! Sheng Yi said coldly. The giant figure did not dare to stay any longer. He rubbed his stinging eyes and fled. This move proved his strength. The trial takers trembled in fear. They no longer dared to treat Sheng Yi as a piece of trash. They could not take back the saber. They decided to retreat. They wanted to enter the ruins to search for the record of the 8 gods. Wait! Stop! Sheng Yi spoke again. He looked at a mysterious woman. The latter narrowed her eyes and said coldly, Sheng Yi, I don't think I've offended you. You attacked Lin Ling, so you'll die here. Sheng Yi held his sword and walked towards the woman. This is a matter between me and Lin Ling. Don't tell me you want to interfere. Moreover, if you kill me, how are you going to answer to Eugene? Sheng Yi, oh Sheng Yi, you're such a fool. Lin Ling wants to kill me, but he wants you to do it. He obviously wants you to take the blame for him. The woman said coldly as she retreated. His words also carried a hint of sowing discord. Saint Yi shook his head. He knew that cultivators couldn't kill each other. Otherwise, they would be punished if they reported this to the gods. However, Lin Ling had almost died because of Nian Wire. Now that he had the strength, how could he not avenge Lin Ling? This was also his way of repaying Lin Ling's kindness. It was the only thing he could do now. However, when Nian Wire saw Sheng Yi shaking his head, she thought that Sheng Yi had thought things through. This way, she wouldn't have to face 2 experts at the same time. She would only have to face Lin Ling alone. Whoosh! That key is very difficult to obtain, so I chose this path. This is the only path I know that doesn't require a key. But I didn't expect it to be so difficult to open. Walking to Lin Ling's side, Nan Wufingyu immediately sat down cross-legged. Lin Ling also sat down cross-legged, and both of them stared at the floating stone tablet. Looking from afar, one could only see an endless, empty wasteland. 2 figures sat there, staring at a stone tablet. The scene was very strange. Lin Ling and Nan Wufingyu tried many methods, but they could only make the blue flame burn brighter. But they couldn't burn the tablet. Is there no other way? In the end, Lin Ling couldn't help but frown. Nan Wufingyu was deep in thought, as if he was searching for a method in his memory. The wasteland seemed to be unable to feel the flow of time. It was very quiet here, and if one stayed here for a long time, one would feel lonely. Lin Ling. After an unknown period of time, the giant ghost suddenly looked at Lin Ling. At this time, Nam Wufingyu seemed to have thought of something. His eyes lit up, and he turned to Lin Ling. Try it with your soul power. Nam Wufingyu and the giant ghost said at the same time. Soul power? Yes, I haven't tried it before. Lin Ling also wanted to try it. After all, when he saw the blue flame blooming with energy, he thought that it was driven by realm essence, so he didn't think about soul power. Then, Lin Ling walked up to the 5-meter-tall stone tablet, and his soul power spread out. Rumble! This time, the stone tablet suddenly shook. It worked. Nam Wufingyu and the giant ghost's eyes narrowed, and they smiled. The blue flame on the side of the stone tablet suddenly jumped up, and then reached a meter high. Seeing this, Lin Ling's heart immediately filled with anticipation, and he activated all of his soul power. His soul power enveloped the blue flame, and the blue flame crackled as if oil was poured into the flame, and it became more and more vigorous. However, this vigor was only the blue flame, and it didn't spread to the entire stone tablet. The blue flame was still in the same place, and there were no signs of it burning any further. Looks like it's still not enough. Lin Ling had a feeling that if he held on a little longer, he would succeed. Burn for me. Lin Ling pushed his soul power to the extreme, and it enveloped the blue flame. His eyes were red, and veins appeared on his face. Crackle! The blue flame was even more vigorous than before. Behind him, Nam Wufingyu clenched his fists, and his face was nervous. Lin Ling, do your best. He never would have thought that Lin Ling's soul power would reach such a limit, and it would probably reach 100,000 levels. Soul power had always been difficult to cultivate. Even he, Nam Wufingyu, only had a few thousand levels. Unless it was some reincarnated great god, or a divine fetus that specialized in soul power, ordinary people rarely exceeded 20,000 levels. Chapter 4295. However, the crack was only the size of a strand of hair. How could he enter? Was he going to crash into it? Lin Ling's mind was filled with thoughts. However, as he got closer to the tablet, he noticed that the crack was getting bigger and bigger, until it was as big as an abyss. Lin Ling took a closer look, and realized that it wasn't the crack that was getting bigger. It was him that was getting smaller. He and Nam Wufingyu both shrunk to the size of a speck of dust, and shot into the crack. Is this Grandpa Treasure God's method? Lin Ling was shocked. The ability to change one's size was something only gods could do. After entering the crack, a blue ocean appeared in front of them. However, this was the blue of the sky, and was different from an ordinary ocean. This blue seems to be the same as the blue fire from before. Lin Ling found that he was constantly returning to his original size. He then stared at the blue ocean around him. He was currently in the middle of the blue ocean. Treasure God Nam Wufingyu was right in front of him. His clothes were fluttering as he looked ahead with a serious expression. He suddenly said, Lin Ling, go in that direction first. Quick, I'll come find you later. His voice was filled with anxiety, causing Lin Ling to immediately nod his head. Without further ado, he grabbed the giant ghost and began to run. At the same time, he looked back and saw that Treasure God Nam Wufingyu was still floating in the water with his hands behind his back, as if waiting for something. Rumble! Suddenly he punched out, and a huge vortex gushed out from his fist. The entire blue ocean seemed to be turning upside down. If Lin Ling didn't leave first, he would have been affected. Grandpa Treasure God, what are you doing? Lin Ling was shocked. He looked carefully, and found that there was a huge blue giant floating in front of Treasure God Nam Wufingyu. It was as grand as a mountain, and maintained a punching posture, as it clashed with Treasure God Nam Wufingyu's fist. The most frightening thing was that it was completely unscathed from Treasure God Nam Wufingyu's punch. Fingyu realm, Treasure God Nam Wufingyu suddenly said solemnly. The rolling power of wind and rain descended from his body. It was the divine stairs. Crash! A vacuum zone appeared in the distant ocean. Following that, the seas and rivers were overturned. The momentum was incomparably terrifying. Meanwhile, Lin Ling's speed was very fast. He rushed further and further away, deeply afraid of being implicated. Only when he could no longer see Treasure God Nam Wufingyu did he slightly slow down. His eyes were full of worry, wondering how Grandpa Treasure God was doing. Let's go. However, just as he turned his head, a figure arrived behind him. It was treasure god Nanwufingyu. Nanwufingyu's hair fluttered behind him like a war god. He arrived before Lin Ling in the blink of an eye, and didn't wait for Lin Ling to speak. He grabbed Lin Ling and charged forward. His speed reached 500,000 worlds. One had to know that Lin Ling's third-stage talent fusion was only 150,000 world speed. Rumble. While treasure god Nanwufingyu was madly rushing forward, a huge whirlpool was rapidly approaching. Its speed was not much slower than treasure god Nanwufingyu's. Lin Ling stared intently at the whirlpool. Only then did he realize that within the blue sea, a completely blue giant was rapidly charging over. Such a terrifying giant. It actually didn't die after clashing with Grandpa Treasure God. However, Treasure God Nanwufingyu's speed was not slow either. One side fled while the other chased. After an unknown amount of time, the sound from behind finally quieted down and gradually disappeared. It seemed to have completely given up. Seeing this, Treasure God Nanwufingyu finally slowed down and lightly exhaled. He smiled at Lin Ling. Finally got rid of that animal. Grandpa Treasure God, what is that thing? It's so powerful. Lin Ling curiously asked because this was the strongest blue giant he had ever seen. I've seen it once in the era of gods. There were a lot of them, and they were very powerful. Moreover, these blue giants were born from the blue fire. Someone once called them the guards of the East Sea Dragon King. Treasure God Nanwufingyu slowed down and spoke to Lin Ling as he walked. Guards of the East Sea Dragon King? Lin Ling nodded. This East Sea Dragon King should be a god from the ancient era. However, it was indeed powerful. One guard was enough to make Grandpa Treasure God run away. If a few more appeared, then he and Treasure God Nanwufingyu would have to give up here. The 8th level was indeed terrifying. No wonder there were so few people in the 9 prefectures who could reach this level after so many years. If Lin Ling were to come alone, he would probably be destroyed by the force of the attack. There are islands in the blue sea. As long as we enter the islands, we will be safe. However, the islands are very hard to find. I hope we won't encounter those monsters before we find them. Treasure God Nanwufingyu sighed, knowing that there would be a lot of work ahead. Giant ghost, you come and try. Lin Ling suddenly looked at the giant ghost on his shoulder. The giant ghost nodded and floated forward with both hands open, sensing everything. This evil ghost? Treasure God Nanwufingyu already knew that there was a giant ghost next to Lin Ling. However, he saw that the giant ghost had a good relationship with Lin Ling, so he didn't investigate. The giant ghost was sensing the existence of the evil ghost, because if it could find the evil ghost, then it would be able to find the island and the spirit kingdom. Over here. A moment later, the giant ghost floated back and told Lin Ling, "This little thing is quite powerful." Treasure God Nanwufingyu said in surprise, but he only received a cold glare from the giant ghost. Outside of Lin Ling, the giant ghost had a ferocious expression towards everyone else. "Oh, you are still angry." Treasure God Nanwufingyu laughed and didn't care about the giant ghost's cold glare. Seeing this, Lin Ling bitterly smiled. If Treasure God Grandpa knew that the giant ghost was one of the 8 gods' wills, then Treasure God Grandpa wouldn't dare to talk to the giant ghost like this. The two followed the giant ghost and moved along the sea. Along the way, they encountered several blue giants, but Treasure God Nanwufingyu noticed them early on and avoided them. Lin Ling discovered that the 8th level was actually a world of water. There were also mountains and forests at the bottom of the water. It was very mysterious. Lin Ling, those blue giants from before had one of the 8 gods' wills. Sitting on Lin Ling's shoulder, the giant ghost suddenly said, "Wills?" Lin Ling's eyes flashed and looked suspiciously at the giant ghost. The giant ghost nodded. "I don't know if they are the East Sea Dragon King's guards, but I am sure that they have the wills of the 8 gods. Chapter 4296. After a while, a large shadow appeared in front of them. This shadow was wrapped in a huge bubble. Upon closer inspection, one could vaguely see the existence of an island. So the islands here are in the sea. Lin Ling's eyes widened, and he stopped at the same time. Treasure God Nanwufingyu slightly closed his eyes as if sensing something. He then said seriously, "There are several powerful auras on the island. If we don't act cautiously, I'm afraid we'll be discovered before we even enter the city. Is that great god of the spirit kingdom here? Lin Ling immediately asked. I can't sense him. That great god of the spirit kingdom is stronger than me. If he wanted to hide, I wouldn't be able to sense him. However, I can sense the aura of my enemy. Treasure god Nanwu Fengyu sighed with a complicated look in his eyes. Seeing this, Lin Ling's eyes quietly flashed. He remembered that when treasure god Nanwu Fengyu entrusted Xiaoyu to him, he also went to find his enemy. In the end, he returned with injuries. Now he was going to find his enemy again. Could it be that his enemy was a great god of the spirit kingdom? All this time, Lin Ling had thought that treasure god Nanwu Fengyu's enemy was one of the 4 gods. Actually, you've also seen him. Sensing Lin Ling's curiosity, treasure god Nanwu Fengyu smiled. He clearly didn't want to tell anyone about this. However, Lin Ling was no longer an ordinary person. He was a god and also the successor of his close friend. Thus, he didn't hide anything. Gods like them rarely had feelings for people. They viewed all living things as ants. Unless the other party had strength that they recognized, they would recognize them and slowly treat them as friends and family. Because their lifespans were endless, they didn't like to see their loved ones and friends leave the world before them, and they had to bear that feeling of loneliness themselves. If that was the case, they would rather not know these people from the beginning, and it wouldn't bring about sadness and reluctance. And this was similar to what Lei Gong thought. He's called Minister Ning, treasure god Nanwu Fengyu said. It's him. Lin Ling naturally recognized this Lord Ning. When he went to save Senior Lu Chun and the others, it was this Lord Ning who let them go. This also meant that Lord Ning was also someone from the age of the gods. However, Lin Ling also sensed an extremely strange emotion from treasure god Nanwu Fengyu's eyes. It was as if he hated Lord Ning, but for some reason, he also appreciated him. It seems that their fetters are not light. Shaking his head, Lin Ling didn't think too much about it. He was thinking about how to enter the island. Lin Ling, the record of the 8 gods that you are looking for is also on the island. Therefore, we must enter the island. Now let's think of a way to get in. Treasure god Nanwu Fengyu put away his thoughts and looked at Lin Ling. Lin Ling pondered for a moment and suddenly smiled. He thought of the time when he snuck into the spirit nation. He could do the same thing again. Immediately, he spoke of his thoughts, making treasure god Nanwu Fengyu nod. The two immediately hit it off. They quietly hid outside the island and waited for someone to come out. After all, they weren't sure if they would be discovered by the great gods of the spirit nation if they rushed into the bubble. This wait wasn't short. After an unknown amount of time, someone finally flew towards the edge of the island. Upon closer inspection, there were quite a number of people. There were more than 10 of them. Hurry up, throw these corpses out, and we will return to the island immediately. Ling Er, what are you doing? You can't even do a small thing properly. What a waste. The group cursed as they walked. They cautiously approached the giant bubble. Obviously, they knew how terrifying the blue giant was. If they were careless and were caught, they would only end up dead. Fortunately, they didn't encounter the blue giant this time. Therefore, they successfully rushed out of the bubble. After they threw away the large number of corpses in their hands, they were about to rush back to the island. Everyone, sorry to trouble you. At this moment, an old man suddenly appeared in front of them, looking at them with a smile. What? There's someone here? This old man undoubtedly gave everyone a fright. On the 8th level, other than the people of the spirit nation, there were no outsiders. This person is very strong. Run. The other party's appearance clearly had ill intentions. Therefore, the group of people didn't hesitate and immediately ran towards the island behind them. However, just as they turned around, a young man in a blue robe floated behind them. He was playing with a wisp of golden flame in his hand. He lowered his head and muttered to himself, "We want to enter the island, so we can only trouble you. In your dreams." Being attacked from the front and back, this naturally made the group of people desperate. They couldn't wait to call for help from the strong people on the island. That young man is weak. Break through from him. One of the men in white robes shouted angrily, pointing at the young man in blue robes. After he finished speaking, he led the group towards Lin Ling. Good taste. At this moment, The young man in blue robes finally raised his head slowly and revealed a bright smile. Although I am weak, I am not someone you can win against. Whoosh. After he finished speaking, the golden flame in his hand spilled out and burned the blue ocean. Ah, what kind of flame is this? Everyone, charge out of the flame and report to the Lord. But why is this flame drilling into my dantian? The people who were being burned let out strange cries. In the end, they all looked at Lin Ling and bowed respectfully. Greetings, Lord. Obviously, they were all assimilated by the golden flame. Lin Ling, beautifully done. Your human king's flame is really a sharp weapon to control people. Seeing this, the old man walked over with a smile and said at the same time, however, a fish has been caught in the net. After he finished speaking, he disappeared on the spot. When he returned again, he was already carrying a man in white robes. The man's limbs were kicking wildly at this moment, but he couldn't resist the old man. Your strength is not bad. I actually missed it. But now, obediently be my subordinate. The young man in blue robes smiled, and a ball of golden flame appeared in his hand. Regardless of whether the man agreed or not, he forcefully stuffed it into his mouth. The man struggled at first, but a wisp of flame quietly appeared in his eyes. His expression gradually became respectful as he bowed to the young man in blue robes and said, Greetings, Lord. By now, this group of people had been subdued by the young man. The young man was naturally Lin Ling. Tell me the secret language of your spirit kingdom. Also, who is the person with the highest status here? Lin Ling smiled. The men in white immediately told him the secret language of the spirit kingdom. The whole process surprised treasure god Nanwufingyu. He never expected Lin Ling to be so familiar with it. Chapter 4297. Looks like I need to find someone with a higher status to get the information I need. Lin Ling rubbed his chin and said, something as important as the records of the 8 gods was naturally unknown to those with a lower status. Perhaps only those who had reached the level of dragon spirit would have the right to know. Grandpa Treasure God, let's enter the island. Lin Ling then looked at Nanwufingyu and smiled. Haha, I came here for revenge, but now that you've messed things up, I feel that it's quite interesting. Come, let's enter the island. Nanwufingyu laughed, feeling that he and Lin Ling had become 2 spies. At this moment, Lin Ling already knew how to enter the island, so he taught Nanwufingyu. It turned out that passing through the bubble required a certain technique, and if the technique was wrong, they would immediately be discovered by the spirit kingdom. The group successfully entered the island, and Lin Ling discovered that there was a huge city on the island, emitting a brilliant white light. It was similar to Spirit Light City, but much grander. There was a huge city gate, and outside the gate stood many Spirit Kingdom guards in white robes. Looking at their strength, they all had innate godly fetuses. Innate godly fetuses as guards, this Spirit Kingdom was truly rich. However, Lin Ling already knew the secret language of the Spirit Kingdom, so it wasn't hard for him to enter the city. A moment later, he and Nanwufingyu were standing on the street. Their gazes swept across the majestic city and found that it had everything. It was like a kingdom. Grandpa Treasure God, this city is quite old. Looks like the Spirit Kingdom has been in the 8th level for quite some time. Yeah, maybe they're deciphering the records of the 8 gods. Or maybe they have something else to do here. As for what it is, we can only find out. Lin Ling and Treasure God Nanwufingyu whispered to each other. They both knew that if they wanted to get more information, they had to find someone with a higher status. Get lost. At this time, on the street, dust spread, and a large number of spirit horses mixed with white light galloped from the distance. The city on the island was very grand, so most people rode on horses. Of course, only those with a high status had the right to ride a horse. As for Lin Ling, his eyes lit up as he stared at the person riding the horse. On the side, Treasure God Nanwufingyu seemed to have guessed Lin Ling's goal. His eyes narrowed as he smiled bitterly. Lin Ling, we're here to be spies. Being so ostentatious doesn't seem too good, right? Hee, since he dares to ride a horse on the streets, his status should not be low. Perhaps I can learn something from him. Lin Ling said with a smile. Your way of doing things is really different from others. Hearing this, treasure god Nan Wufengyu's smile became even more bitter. This was his first time being such a blatant spy. Scram! Indeed, the young man dared to be so arrogant because he was relying on his brother. Who's his brother? Lin Ling asked lazily. His brother is Long Ling. Are you afraid? He's 2 levels higher than you. Are you afraid? Kneel down immediately. Don't think that you're amazing just because your Huang Ling Long Ling can easily kill you. The young man clearly thought that Lin Ling was afraid. Hearing this, Lin Ling did not say a word. Instead, he walked over step by step, causing the people behind the young man to sneer. They naturally would not let Lin Ling go. However, before killing Lin Ling, they wanted to humiliate him. However, Lin Ling was afraid? What a joke! Lin Ling walked to the front of those people and threw out a punch like a battering ram. He punched each of them more than 10 times, causing them to spit out blood and their sternum to break. This. The surrounding onlookers were all dumbfounded. He knew that Long Ling was Long Ling's brother, but he still dared to attack. Was he crazy? You dare to hit me? Don't you know that my brother is Long Ling? The young man did not expect Lin Ling to attack. He pointed at Lin Ling angrily and said. However, Lin Ling walked towards him step by step. Then, without waiting for him to attack, Lin Ling slapped him viciously. The man was sent flying and smashed into a large number of houses. Then, Lin Ling walked over again and found the young man in the ruins of the houses. Then he slapped him again. Chapter 4298. Just like that, Lin Ling brazenly beat up the young man on the street. In the end, the young man could only exhale and no longer breathe. Moreover, his mind was in a daze because he didn't understand why Lin Ling would beat him up. He didn't seem to have offended Lin Ling. Where's your big brother? Tell him to come find me, or I'll throw you off the island. Lin Ling said indifferently as he lifted the young man. Everything he did was naturally to lure out the dragon spirit. He even wanted to steal the dragon spirit's identity and find out where the 8 god brush records were hidden in the spirit kingdom. Big pot Jie is coming. The young man had already been beaten into a pig's head and couldn't speak clearly. However, Lin Ling still understood what the young man was saying. Big brother, I'm coming. Therefore, Lin Ling also threw the young man on the ground and stepped on him. Then, he asked someone to bring a chair over and waited for the young man's brother on the street. Who is this Huang Ling? She's crazy. I don't know, maybe he just came. But when the dragon spirit comes, he will definitely be in trouble. Yes, not to mention that Long Ling's status is higher than his. Even if Long Ling's status is the same as his, he is definitely not Long Ling's opponent. It seems like there will be new corpses outside the island. I'm afraid that even Huang Ling's subordinates will be killed. Around the streets, many people were discussing animatedly. They were so excited that they were already laughing loudly. They sat down in a nearby restaurant and waited for everything to happen. The people of Spirit Nation are about the same as the people of 9 states. But overall, they are slightly stronger than the people of 9 states. Treasure god Nan Wufengyu heard the voices around him and laughed mockingly. He slowly walked towards Lin Ling. At first, he was afraid that he would cause too much of a commotion and be noticed by the great gods of the Spirit Nation. But now, it seemed that he had underestimated the grandeur of this city. What happened on this street would obviously not alarm the great gods of the Spirit Nation. Lin Ling waited quietly. Not long after, someone finally arrived on the street in front of him. It was a man in a white robe. He was very tall, and his long hair draped over his shoulders. His eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. He also came alone, but his aura was very sharp. When he walked along the street, the people around him all made way for him. So cold. Is he that dragon spirit? Many people whispered to each other. After all, this city was too large. Not only were there many phoenix spirits, there were even quite a few dragon spirits. That was why they didn't recognize that man. Brother. On the ground, the young man raised his head and fearfully shouted, "What a piece of trash!" The man's long hair fluttered in the wind as he coldly glanced at his younger brother. The young man was so scared that he didn't dare to raise his head again. It could be seen that this dragon spirit was also very serious towards his younger brother. Let my brother go. After a while, the man stood not far away from Lin Ling and looked indifferently at Lin Ling as he spoke. He was also carefully examining Lin Ling's strength. However, he could only roughly tell that Lin Ling was a level 9 martial god. Since he was able to become a dragon spirit, he was already half a step into the deity realm. Moreover, he possessed a powerful divine fetus that had reached the 5th grade. Therefore, he couldn't understand why such a weak person dared to provoke him. While he was observing Lin Ling was also observing him. This was because through this man, he could roughly understand the strength of the entire spirit nation. Overall, it was similar to what Lin Ling had imagined. It was also slightly stronger than the martial artists of the 9 continents. However, there were fewer people in the spirit nation, so it couldn't be compared to the 9 continents. That was all. Sure, I'll let him go if you defeat me. Lin Ling stared at the sword at the man's waist and then said. He could tell that this man was a swordsman. Defeat you? You have the guts to fight me with your strength. Forget it, if I win, I'll let you leave alive. However, all your subordinates will die. The dragon spirit nodded and placed his arm on the hilt of the sword at his waist. However, he didn't draw his sword. Instead, he stared sharply at Lin Ling like an eagle's eyes. He was looking for Lin Ling's weakness. He was a swordsman and was good at killing blows. He wanted to defeat Lin Ling with a single strike. The street suddenly fell silent, and the atmosphere was terrifyingly oppressive. The people stared at the dragon spirit, who was standing upright like a pine tree, and licked their lips. For some reason, they had a feeling that if the dragon spirit drew his sword, it would cause an earth-shattering change. Still not drawing your sword? You must be afraid. Suddenly Lin Ling said calmly. The dragon spirit's eyes flashed when he heard that. He didn't understand why Lin Ling said that. After all, the dragon spirit was too calm in the face of a swordsman who was about to draw his sword. He even sensed that Lin Ling didn't put up any defense at all, and seemed to intend to take his sword head-on. All of this was too strange. Although you're very powerful, I can tell that your mentality has changed. You have doubts and hesitations, so you haven't drawn your sword for a long time. Lin Ling said calmly, still sitting on the chair. Whoosh! A gust of wind blew across the street, and blew the dragon spirit's long hair. His hand moved slightly, and his sword swayed, as if it was about to be drawn at any time. However, he still didn't draw his sword. That was because he had more and more doubts in his heart. He couldn't see through the man in front of him anymore. You are surprised why I want to fight you, right? After all, you and I have no enmity. Why would I, a little phoenix spirit, provoke you? In addition, facing your dragon spirit's sword, I am still sitting there, quietly waiting for your sword to arrive. So, you are even more suspicious than before, although you are not suspicious. However, you're suspicious of me. You're afraid that you won't be able to win after you draw your sword, and I'll take control of the situation instead. At this moment Lin Ling spoke again, and his tone was as calm as ever. The onlookers in the surroundings noticed that something wasn't right. Because Lin Ling was too calm. Wasn't he afraid of being killed, if he just sat there like that? Your heart is getting more and more chaotic. But remember, truth and falsehood, falsehood and truth. Sometimes, everything you see might be an illusion. So you have to calm down and don't place too much importance on victory or defeat. That way, you'll be able to bring out your true sword. Lin Ling spoke again, and it was as if he was instructing the dragon spirit. The dragon spirit still didn't speak, so no one knew what he was thinking. However, the ripples in his heart were growing larger and larger. He was a swordsman, and he was proud. He wasn't like ordinary cultivators, who preferred to decide the outcome of a battle with a single move. Moreover, he placed great importance on victory and defeat. Since he was young, he couldn't allow himself to lose. He didn't want to lose in anything. His desire to win was too strong, just like his sword that revealed its sharpness. Originally, he was confident that he could defeat Lin Ling with a single strike. However, Lin Ling was too mysterious, causing him to lack confidence. That was why he hadn't drawn his sword. Chapter 4299. Clang. Right at this time, Long Ling finally drew his sword. a dazzling light appeared, actually illuminating the entire street. Countless people felt a chill that penetrated their hearts. It was as if the world was frozen. 1,500 rays of divinity turned into a swift sword that slashed towards Lin Ling. Other than treasure god Nan Wufingyu and Lin Ling, no one else could see through this sword. Treasure god Nan Wufingyu revealed a smile. Lin Ling was the same. The two of them didn't move. The sharp sword also passed through Lin Ling's body. After a while, everyone recovered. They stared at the street and trembled nervously. However, after they glanced around, they realized that the street didn't change at all. Everything was the same as before. Lin Ling was still sitting on the chair with a smile on his face. The people around him were the same. They didn't suffer any injuries. This scene was too strange. They looked at the dragon spirit again. He resumed his posture of placing his hand on the sword hilt. His sharp eyes looked at Lin Ling. However, this time there were obvious changes. At this time, a strand of hair by Lin Ling's ear finally fell down like snow and reached the ground. The previous sword only cut off a strand of Lin Ling's hair. The sword that suppressed 1,500 rays of divinity only cut off a strand of hair. This also showed how powerful the dragon spirit was. After all, such a powerful sword wasn't hard to cut through the sky. Your heart is indeed in a mess. It was just a probing sword. Are you afraid that after this sword, you will lose? So you want to test my limits? At this moment, Lin Ling smiled faintly. Hearing this, the dragon spirit's eyes flashed. He didn't speak. However, Lin Ling didn't need him to speak to know what he was thinking. The dragon spirit was too suspicious. He wanted to win beautifully. So before he had complete control, he wouldn't easily use his full strength. Because he didn't want to be controlled by others. To put it bluntly, this person was too arrogant. Arrogant to the point of being pedantic. You've won with this strike. Lin Ling finally spoke calmly. Why? This was also the first time the dragon spirit had spoken. Because I didn't do anything when facing your previous attack. Nor did I defend myself. I just wanted to see how powerful your sword was. However, because you were too suspicious, you missed an opportunity. Lin Ling said. What? Dragon spirit's pupils constricted. Previously, when Lin Ling was sitting there strangely, he thought that Lin Ling had everything under control and was just waiting for him to jump into the trap. Therefore, his previous sword strike was also a probing strike. But who knew that Lin Ling didn't do anything? I don't know if this person is too daring or too stupid. If that sword had been aimed at you, you would have died. Long Ling whispered. Sometimes life and death can be decided in an instant. I don't think that I will die. In fact, the chances of me dying are very small. This is my intuition. Lin Ling shook his head and slowly stood up. Boundary essence surged from his body, and the second stage talent fusion appeared. Although using the second stage talent fusion in Spirit Nation was easy to be discovered, it was still better than using the Luai's real body. After all, Spirit Nation definitely knew that Lin Ling had the human monarch's flame and the Luai's real body. However, they might not have seen the second stage talent fusion. After the talent fusion, Lin Ling erupted with all his strength. He turned into an afterimage and appeared in front of Long Ling. His sword struck out like lightning. Whoosh! Long Ling's long hair fluttered in the wind. His pupils constricted, and he could only see the flash of the sword. However, the sword did not strike down. Instead, it landed in front of Long Ling's neck. An icy chill quietly blossomed. The most terrifying thing was that this chill contained the might of Vajra. This was the power of Bodhi. When everyone saw Lin Ling pointing his sword at Long Ling, their eyes were filled with disbelief. What a fast speed. What a sharp sword. Who is this Huang Ling? Why is she so strong? The result today was clearly beyond their expectations. Long Ling's heart trembled. He could sense the terror of this sword. Huang Ling was so powerful. A swordsman should be decisive. Being indecisive is a taboo. You clearly had the chance to defeat me, but you missed it because of hesitation. From this perspective, you have lost. Lin Ling held his sword and said indifferently. Long Ling stood there quietly. He had the chance to defeat Lin Ling, but he missed it. By the time Lin Ling drew his sword, he was already powerless to flip the cards. A swordsman should be decisive. A shocking voice rose in Long Ling's heart. I've lost. He raised his head and looked at Lin Ling. There was a hint of respect in his eyes. This mysterious Huang Ling was very powerful and mysterious. Who exactly was he? I want your identity as Long Ling. Lin Ling still pointed his sword at Long Ling. He did not hide his purpose, and went straight to the point. This was also the reason why he let Long Ling draw his sword first. Long Ling was a proud swordsman. Such a person could be assimilated, but the process would not be easy. The latter would definitely not submit to him. On the street, Lin Ling could not force it. Therefore, the only way was to make Long Ling submit from the bottom of his heart. In addition, Lin Ling was also a swordsman. Therefore, he knew what a swordsman valued the most. It was their sword Dao. Long Ling's sword Dao was not perfect and had flaws. Therefore, Lin Ling also taught him sword Dao. Of course, Lin Ling was also gambling. If Long Ling was loyal to Ling Nation's great god, then Lin Ling would lose. Of course, Lin Ling also thought of a way out. If Long Ling was stubborn, then he would ask Nanwufingyu to take action and work together to assimilate Long Ling. Who are you? Long Ling looked at Lin Ling and said, Trial taker Lin Ling. Lin Ling's voice could only be heard by the two of them. Moreover, he did not hide anything. Long Ling's eyes trembled when he heard this. Then he looked at Lin Ling in shock. Lin Ling's name was well known in the Spirit Nation. It was said that he was one of the 8 new gods under the 4 great gods. He was an extremely famous and powerful figure in the 9 states. Long Ling had heard of him for a long time. Today was his first time meeting him. Moreover, he did not expect Lin Ling to be so bold as to come to the island. After all, the Spirit Nation had always been eyeing Lin Ling covetously. I can't help but admire your courage. However, how can you be so sure that I will give you the identity of Long Ling? Long Ling said word by word. His heart was inexplicably excited. Perhaps he felt lucky to be able to meet such a legendary figure. After all, he had heard that Lin Ling was also a swordsman. I also admire your courage to say such words in front of me, Lin Ling. Lin Ling said calmly. However, his seemingly calm words carried a domineering aura. Then he said lightly, Because you have lost. Although I have lost, I did not agree to any of your conditions. You are overthinking it. Long Ling sneered. It is also because you are a swordsman. However, Lin Ling quickly added. His words made Long Ling's heart tremble. His eyes continued to flicker. Chapter 4300. You've won. The dragon spirit looked deeply at Lin Ling and finally spoke calmly. He was indeed a proud swordsman. After losing to a swordsman like Lin Ling, he was willing to accept his loss. After all, the previous sword competition was not only a competition of strength, but also a competition of sword heart. However, the dragon spirit hesitated and did not believe in his sword. This violated the principle of the sword Dao. Moreover, he also knew why Lin Ling was so confident and dared to face his sword. It was because he was Lin Ling. Follow me. The dragon spirit then spoke to Lin Ling and strode forward. The crowd was confused when they saw this scene. However, they knew that the two of them were top experts. No one was qualified to ask what they wanted to do. Brother! The young man shouted, as if he was worried about his brother. He looked at Lin Ling in shock. He never expected that the mysterious phoenix spirit would defeat his brother. You go back first. The dragon spirit turned to look at the young man and suddenly smiled. The smile shocked the young man. His brother actually smiled. One had to know that his brother was obsessed with the sword Dao and did not care about the world. He cut off all friendship and everything with his sword. He had not smiled for 30,000 years. At this moment, the young man seemed to see the scene of him and his brother becoming stronger when they were young. I'll be back. The dragon spirit continued to move forward, but left behind a sentence. Okay, I'll wait for my brother. The young man was extremely excited, and his eyes were moist. He suddenly had a feeling that his brother's sword Dao seemed to have been sublimated and stepped into a new realm. Only such a brother was like the big brother, who had protected him back then. Lin Ling noticed this and smiled. He did not know what the dragon spirit had comprehended, but he knew that the dragon spirit's realm was about to step into a new realm. The two of them arrived at a restaurant. The dragon spirit chased everyone away, and then invited Lin Ling to sit down. Throughout the entire process, it was neither arrogant nor humble. It had the arrogance that a swordsman should have. Your sword is very arrogant, like a lonely peak. However, this sword has a flaw, and that is loneliness. Now you seem to understand that the sword is all things. It can be a gust of wind, a grain of sand, or even a cloud in the sky. Lin Ling said casually after sitting down. That's right. I used to think that there was only the sword in the world, and nothing could move me. But now, I feel that everything is a sword, and the sword is in my heart. Everywhere is a sword. The dragon spirit said with a smile. He was originally gloomy, but his smile was quite clean. Then he looked at Lin Ling and said, Lin Ling, your sword Dao is different from many swordsmen. However, you have the heart of the sword and the principles of a swordsman. Because I am not a pure swordsman, but I am also a swordsman. Just like you said, all things are swords, and the sword is in my heart. Everywhere is a sword. Lin Ling picked up the wine pot on the table, poured a cup for the dragon spirit, and then said, although it was the first time he and the dragon spirit met, because of the similarity of their sword Dao, they had a feeling of regret that they had not met earlier. And this feeling was hard to explain. It was like an intuition. In fact, when Lin Ling first met the dragon spirit, he had this feeling. You should be here for the record of the 8 gods. After drinking a mouthful of wine, the dragon spirit laughed and Lin Ling nodded. The record of the 8 gods is in the core of the city, which is the Jiujiu Tong. At present, many experts are comprehending the record of the 8 gods, trying to find the next host of the world will. However, this record is more complicated than the one on the 7th floor. So over the years, the progress has been very slow. The dragon spirit continued. I wonder what experts there are in this city. Lin Ling asked. There are many experts, led by Lord Ning, the city lord of Yi City, Han Xia, and other experts. At present, Han Xia is the only person who is most familiar with the record of the 8 gods. Moreover, other than Lord Ning, there is another god in the city, and his name is Emperor God Zhonggang. The great god of the spirit nation had a battle, and was suppressed here. The great god of the spirit nation wanted this steel slayer god emperor to join the spirit nation. Emperor God Zhonggang? You know him? Yes. The dragon spirit was indeed worthy of his high status. He knew a lot of information, which benefited Lin Ling a lot. What surprised him was that Emperor God Zhonggang was also here. Things were more troublesome than he had imagined. Emperor God Zhonggang was one of the few gods that Lin Ling knew. Back then, in the Starry Sky Forest, one of the 7 great forbidden grounds in the 9 regions, Lin Ling saw him awaken with his own eyes. At that time, Lin Ling was in conflict with the Duan clan, and it was Emperor God Zhonggang who helped him out. Later, Emperor God Zhonggang came to find Lin Ling, and told Lin Ling how powerful the scabbard on Lin Ling's back was. Now that Emperor God Zhonggang was trapped, Lin Ling would not stand by and do nothing. Does the spirit nation know about the record of the 8 gods on the 7th level? Then Lin Ling asked again. Yes, and it's not a secret in the spirit nation. That host is one of the 4 great gods, right? The dragon spirit nodded. Hearing this, Lin Ling's face turned even uglier. He thought that this secret was only known to him, but now it seemed that many people knew about it. Oh right, is there anyone from the 9 regions void in your spirit nation? Lin Ling asked again. Yes. Chapter 4301. After he finished speaking, he imparted everything he knew to Lin Ling. Lin Ling, I know you're here for the record of the 8 gods. However, be careful. There are many experts gathered on this island. One wrong move could affect the whole group. The dragon spirit stood up and said solemnly. Lin Ling nodded and watched the dragon spirit leave. Then he drank his wine. If he wanted the record of the 8 gods, he would have to enter the spirit nation's lair. At that time, he would have to face countless experts. Moreover, he had to help Emperor God Zhonggang. This is more troublesome than I thought. At this time, Nan Wufingyu walked in and sat down. He drank his wine and looked at Lin Ling. Yes, the main thing is Emperor God Zhonggang. Lin Ling sighed. He felt that it wouldn't be difficult to get the record of the 8 gods. However, it wouldn't be easy to save Emperor God Zhang Gang. You should save him. If it's just one thing, we can solve it and leave. Unfortunately, if it's two things, the spirit nation will be in turmoil. All the experts will come out and target us. Nam Wufingyu sighed. Although he didn't know Emperor God Zhang Gang, he heard that this expert was personally dealt with by the great god of the spirit nation. This showed the opponent's strength. Grandpa Treasure God, can you suppress Lord Ning? Suddenly, Lin Ling looked at Nam Wufingyu and asked. Yes. Nam Wufingyu nodded immediately. Good, Grandpa Treasure God will be in charge of restraining Lord Ning. I'll save him. Lin Ling stood up. Among the experts of the spirit kingdom that he knew, the only one he was wary of was Lord Ning. With Treasure God Nam Wufingyu restraining him, Lin Ling was confident that he could fight against the others even if they were strong. It's time to settle the grudge between us. Nam Wufingyu also stood up. He knew that the spy mission was over. Soon, there would be a storm in the spirit nation. Because he and Lin Ling, these two experts, would turn this place upside down. Giant Ghost, it's time to settle the grudge between you and Evil Ghost. Lin Ling turned to the Giant Ghost and said, Yes, it's time to settle it. The Giant Ghost also floated up. A hint of battle intent appeared in its fierce eyes. Lin Ling, I reckon that there might be something the evil spirits want in the notes of the 8 gods on this level. That's why Wuxia hasn't announced who the next host is. He wants to use the time to obtain the item in the notes of the 8 gods. The Giant Ghost looked at Lin. I'll leave it to you, Wuxia. Leave. Han. Lin Ling strode out of the inn. He knew that there was no time to lose. It was time to make his move. This was a special feature of the island. There were countless roads that extended in all directions. It was like a giant maze. These alleys were so big that one couldn't see the end of them. Right now, there are many who have secretly joined the Spirit Kingdom, but they are still hiding. Right now, the 9 continents is filled with vicissitudes. Lin Ling also sighed. He wanted to stop the world's will from destroying the world, but this was clearly very difficult, extremely difficult. Let's go. Shaking his head, Lin Ling knew that the most important thing right now was to find the 8 gods' diary and the Steel Slayer Emperor. He led Nam Wufingyu forward through the alleys, turning left and right. After an unknown amount of time, the walls in front of them quietly changed color with a gentle white light. We've reached the core. The map left behind by the dragon spirit appeared in Lin Ling's mind, so his battle intent quietly boiled. Lin Ling, you go. If there are experts coming, I'll stop them for you. Nam Wufingyu said to Lin Ling, his body also emitting battle intent. Grandpa Treasure God, be careful. If the Steel Slayer Emperor is rescued, remember to bring him away. If I don't come out, then don't worry about me. Lin Ling said, then left through the alleys. Although he also knew that if he wanted to obtain the 8 gods' notes, it would be unavoidable for a big battle to happen. But it was obviously better for this kind of big battle to happen after obtaining the notes. Following these people, they arrived in front of a light wall. The person transformed by the white dog suddenly spat out the spirit nation's language. After those runes formed by realm essence smashed into the light wall, the light on the light wall immediately receded like a tide. Next, the 4 people strode forward. Coolwood Palace, this is my first time here. If not for Brother Inagami leading the way, we wouldn't know how to get in. Brother Inagami has been to the palace several times, and he is second to none among the dragon spirits. The 3 people following behind seemed to be very excited. After all, without the permission of the people in the Coolwood Palace, it was very difficult for outsiders to enter. Even dragon spirits couldn't. Listening to their conversation, Lin Ling nodded slightly and expressionlessly entered the light wall. The interior of the light wall was no longer filled with alleys. Instead, it was more like a huge garden with divine trees everywhere. Lin Ling even saw a few indigo spirit flowers planted in the flower bed. However, upon closer inspection, he realized that the color was somewhat different. It seemed to be the ordinary type of indigo spirit flowers. But thinking about it, they were also very precious, as they could greatly improve a martial artist's talent. That is a copper-rich fruit. And that is a luowang tree, I didn't expect this garden to be a treasure trove. Lin Ling's eyes under the cloak were looking around, and his heart was also shocked. With his eyesight, he could naturally see that the divine flowers and divine fruits in this garden were rare existences in the 9 continents. If not for Lin Ling having his own purpose, he really wanted to rob this place clean. Following the 3 people all the way, Lin Ling also noticed that the direction had changed, because according to his estimation, the 8 gods' records were at the core, but these 3 people were walking to the side, obviously to see the dog god. Therefore, Lin Ling also planned to separate from these people. A golden flame floated out, falling on the last 2 people, and instantly burned them. You Lan Langjun, what are you doing? This sudden change was also noticed by the 2 people in front, and they both turned around, their faces full of shock. The person who led Lin Ling in, at this moment, took off his cloak, revealing a handsome face and angrily shouted, Lan Langjun, I already knew that you wanted to betray the dog god. So it is true. Don't tell me you want to worship the newly promoted holy spirits. Have you forgotten how well the dog god treated you? Really? Lan Langjun, you are ungrateful. The other person also scolded. Lin Ling was speechless. Until now, these people still did not know that he was an imposter. However, he already had the intention to kill. So let these 2 people die knowing. He slowly took off his cloak, revealing his original appearance. With Lin Ling's current strength, it was a piece of cake for him to hide his aura from these people. Unless he took off his cloak, these people would not be able to recognize him. I am not Lan Langjun. After taking off his cloak, Lin Ling said coldly, I know. You have changed. You are not the Lan Langjun of the past. You changed too quickly. However, what made Lin Ling speechless was that the 2 people still thought that Lin Ling was Lan Langjun, and they were filled with righteous indignation. Lin Ling shook his head, too lazy to talk nonsense. Crackle. One must know that before he went to Eternal Kingdom, he could already defeat a dragon spirit expert, let alone now. The person who was being ravaged by the lightning let out a painful cry, and was finally ravaged into powder. Lei, you are not Lan Langjun. The last person finally reacted. When did I say that I was? However, you seem to know a lot of things. Become my citizen. Lin Ling sneered, controlling the human king's flame to drown this person. But this person's strength was amazing. He actually turned into a white divine dog, as if sinking into water, slowly disappearing into the ground. Want to leave? Seeing that the other party was able to rush out of the control of the human king's flame, Lin Ling also cut the weeds by the roots. The tyrant song sword appeared in his hand, and he threw it forward. Puchi! Under the ground, blood spurted out, and Lin Ling sensed that this person's life force had dissipated. Chapter 4304. The man held a huge sword in his hand, and an evil spirit floated on his shoulder. His eyes were filled with evil charm, as he looked at everyone. Under his gaze, as long as one was weak, they lowered their heads. Their hearts were like thunder, roaring unceasingly. They all guessed that this person should be Lin Ling. Lin Ling's name was too sharp. For many people, they had heard of him for a long time, and today, they finally met him in person. Moreover, they did not expect Lin Ling to arrive at the main hall so quickly. Long time no see, Wuxia. A calm voice floated out from Lin Ling's mouth. Then, he slowly took off his cloak, revealing a symbolic blue and white robe. New God Lin Ling. In the crowd, Wuxia already knew that Lin Ling had arrived, so he stared at Lin Ling with an evil smile. His eyes were bloodthirsty. At the same time, Luli Empress also looked at Lin Ling compared to Wuxia's evil smile. Her face was full of shock. Luli Empress, you didn't expect me to come, did you? Lin Ling also looked at Luli Empress, and the killing intent and battle intent in his eyes were boiling. It was because he had 2 enemies here. Indeed, I didn't expect it. After all, the 8th level of the 8 gods' heavenly palace is not a place that ordinary people can enter. Moreover, even if you can enter, finding this island in the sea is like finding a needle in a haystack. let alone reaching the underground palace. Lily Empress said with a smile. Of course, if it was someone else, I would definitely think that it was a dream. But for you, Li Xiaoyao, anything is possible. Boom. As soon as she finished speaking, her body exploded with boundary energy, and the entire underground palace shook. It was time for her and Lin Ling's grudge to end. Lin Ling, give me your life. Without waiting for Lin Ling to speak, Lily Empress had already made her move. She turned into a cloud of black smoke and quickly shot towards Lin Ling. In midair, a claw appeared, showing off its sharpness. Lily Empress. Thunder wings appeared behind Lin Ling. The 8 wings made him look like a thunder god. With a slight movement, he disappeared from the spot. With a sword in hand, it was as if he owned the world. The two seemed far away, but in the blink of an eye they clashed. Rumble. At the center of the large hall, 2 figures were anxiously fighting. Their bodies were surrounded by a sea urchin-like ripple of world essence. It was extremely terrifying. Crash. Large amounts of rubble rained down from the roof of the main hall. However, the main hall was filled with a white light and was incomparably sturdy. After all, this place was protected by the records of the 8 gods. Naturally, the defense was incomparably strong. It was personally set up by the great god of the spirit kingdom. Seeing the two of them clashing, the gods of the spirit nation looked extremely serious. In the blink of an eye, the two of them disappeared. Lily Empress's speed was incomparably fast, as if darkness had invaded. Her claws were shining with the light of a black lotus, and she kept suppressing Lin Ling. Lin Ling's body was retreating. However, as he waved his sword, it was as if the wind and rain could not penetrate it. Therefore, although he seemed to be retreating, he was actually safe and sound. Li Xiaorao died. Suddenly, Lily Empress appeared behind Lin Ling, and a claw viciously swiped at Lin Ling. The claw was like a blooming black lotus, very mysterious. Looking closely, there were 2 Lily Empress, one in front and one behind, sandwiching Lin Ling. Not only was the claw fast, but the divine energy was also incomparably ferocious. It was the black divine energy, as if it was the first darkness in the world. Bang! Lin Ling did not have time to react. His back was immediately hit by the claw, which made him feel as if he had been attacked by lightning. However, before this feeling faded, another claw came from his chest. With a bang, Lin Ling's body began to fly backward. Li Xiaoyao, the fetters of our previous life and the grudges of this life should be settled. As Lin Ling was flying backward, suddenly, a huge palm came from above Lin Ling's head. Clang! Lin Ling raised his sword to block. At the moment of collision, his white lightning on the sword spewed out in all directions. However, just as the huge palm collided with the sky, another claw came from behind and hit Lin Ling again, causing blood to flow from the corner of Lin Ling's mouth. Li Xiaoyao, there is a path to heaven, but you don't take it. There is no door to hell, but you barged in. At the same time, 3 shadows of Lily Empress appeared and surrounded Lin Ling. These shadows had the strength of the peak of the martial god realm, and were incomparably terrifying. This holy spirit is so strong. Seeing Lily Empress storm-like attacks, everyone was scared pale. They finally understood why the spirit nation valued Lily Empress so much. Rumble. In the end, Lin Ling was blasted backward and smashed into the wall in the distance, causing the white light on the wall to ripple like water waves. When Lin Ling was first sent flying, Lily Empress used the divine battle technique. In a short period of time, she attacked 356 million times. Lin Ling was simply unable to fight back. Han Xie narrowed his eyes and said indifferently. He obviously did not expect Lily Empress to hate Lin Ling so much that she used such a terrifying killing move the moment they met. Boom. However, at this moment there was a roar. A huge door suddenly appeared behind Lily Empress, who was standing on the ground. Then, the door slammed into her back, causing her to spit out a mouthful of blood. What's going on? That's Lin Ling. Everyone was shocked. First, they looked at the wall in the distance, and saw that the white light was still rippling like water. Then a human figure appeared. However, Lin Ling had disappeared. Then, they looked at the position where Lily Empress was standing before. There stood a man. holding a sword with both hands and swinging it, as if he was swinging a huge axe. Of course, this figure was like a reflection on the surface of the water. It gradually blurred and finally disappeared. It was an afterimage. They saw that above Luli Empress, who was sent flying, a figure appeared. He swung a huge sword that was as big as a door and slammed it down. Looking at his majestic appearance, it was as if he was a god who created the world. Boom! When the ferocious sword slammed into Luli Empress, she was smashed to the ground. She even bounced a few times and spat out a mouthful of blood again. A huge crack appeared on the white light curtain on the ground. It was at least 10 meters wide. Ka. However, there was a sound immediately. The 10-meter wide crack sank again. It gradually reached 50 meters, and finally 100 meters. The appearance of such a white crack was like a huge spider web. It was undoubtedly very dazzling in the majestic palace. Ah! The deities of the spirit nation exclaimed. This was because the divine light that the deities of the spirit nation had set up was also cracked. Lin Ling's attack power was too terrifying. Bang! Almost at the same time, Lin Ling floated down from a corner of the palace. He wiped the blood from his mouth and revealed a cold smile. Chapter 4305. That can't be. Could it be that the previous intense battle was just a warm-up? Just a warm-up, and they're already so ferocious. If they were to really fight, I'm afraid this island would be destroyed. Moreover, Luli Empress had suppressed Lin Ling and left Lin Ling in a difficult situation. But very quickly Lin Ling returned the favor. TSK, they're evenly matched. Of course, they're the 8 new gods of this generation. The experts of Spirit Nation exclaimed as they felt that their horizons had been broadened. Clap, clap, clap. At this time, Han Xie clapped his hands and said, "Wonderful, wonderful. In today's 9 states, other than the 4 great gods, the 8 new gods are the strongest. Therefore, to be able to see the battle between the new gods has benefited me greatly." Only he knew that the previous confrontation between Lin Ling and Luli Empress was, in fact, just a warm-up. Perhaps it could be said that they were probing each other. It wasn't a real battle to the death. Moreover, the injuries they suffered were only minor injuries. Because Han Xie knew very well that the two of them were definitely not as weak as he had imagined. Lin Ling, you spent so much effort to come here for the record of the 8 gods, right? Subsequently, Han Xie looked at Lin Ling and said. Lin Ling nodded and smiled as he looked at the huge stone tablet behind Han Xie. Unless I'm lost, I'm probably here for that thing. Straightforward, I like honest people. But do you think you can obtain the record of the 8 gods in front of so many experts of Spirit Nation? Han Xie was still smiling. He played with his fingernails and said, "Perhaps if you can't obtain the record of the 8 gods, you might die here. Perhaps I'm a person who likes to court death. Anyway, if you don't try, how do you know if you'll succeed?" Lin Ling shrugged and said casually, "Then go ahead and try. Now, you can make your move because the record of the 8 gods is right behind me. I guarantee that I won't stop you." Han Xie stared at Lin Ling, his battle intent boiling. He knew that Lin Ling would definitely not be able to escape today. Not to mention Luli Empress and him, the sacred spirit. Even Lord Ning wouldn't let Lin Ling leave Spirit Nation. There were only 2 choices left for Lin Ling. One was to join the Spirit Nation. 2 die. Come. If you want the record of the 8 gods, I can give it to you. Then, Han Xie walked to the record of the 8 gods, as if he was righteous enough to give of the record of the 8 gods. However, Lin Ling didn't move. Instead, he furrowed his brows. Ha, trial taker Lin Ling. You were so domineering in the past. You were famous in Jiuzhou and Spirit Nation. But now, you've become so timid. Is this still Lin Ling? Seeing that Lin Ling didn't move, Han Xie suddenly laughed wildly. The other deities of Spirit Nation sneered. Although they were afraid of Lin Ling's strength, they also knew that since Lin Ling had come to Spirit Nation's lair, he wouldn't be able to return. I'm just waiting. While everyone was laughing, Lin Ling slowly put away the tyrannical song sword and retracted the Luai's real form, returning to his original appearance. However, this made everyone think that Lin Ling had given up and didn't dare to move. Wait, what a nice way to put it. At this time Lily Empress also said, Li Xiaoyao, I know you too well. You're not waiting. Instead, you're estimating the strength of both sides and whether it's worth it. Unfortunately, you've estimated that with so many of us here, it's impossible for you to get the record of the 8 gods. You know that outside the underground palace, Lord Ning should be on his way. So you're just waiting because you're afraid. Hearing this, Lin Ling smiled and remained silent. Lin Ling, stop trying to be mysterious. I've said that the record of the 8 gods is right there. If you want it, I'll give it to you. Let's see if you dare to take it. If you keep silent, it doesn't mean that you'll be safe. Han Xie also smiled and said calmly. Then, seeing that Lin Ling still didn't move, he knew that Lin Ling didn't dare to make a move. So he decided to make a move. However, just as he was about to make a move, suddenly, an earth-shattering sound rang out in the underground palace and shook the entire island. Wong wong wong. The Liang Palace was shaking. Large amounts of rubble fell from the roof of the main hall, giving everyone a fright. What's going on? Lily Empress frowned, because the previous explosion made her realize that it was an attack from a god. It was extremely powerful and ferocious. It could be said that the entire island had been destroyed. Boom, boom, boom. However, the explosions didn't stop. Instead, they grew louder. The entire island was in chaos, as though it was facing an apocalyptic catastrophe. At almost the same time, Lin Ling's lips curled into a smile. On his body, the first stage of the innate talent fusion quietly appeared. Countless tentacles swayed behind him, as though a demon had descended from the underground palace. I've been waiting for him. A furious roar erupted from Lin Ling's mouth. Whoosh! Lin Ling shot towards the 8 gods' celestial palace, his speed incomparably fast. At this time, Han Xie also woke up from the explosion. He looked around, and immediately saw a monster pouncing towards the record of the 8 gods. How dare you! He roared and rushed forward, wanting to stop Lin Ling. However, Lin Ling had already fused the innate talent fusion, so a dragon claw swept over. Han Xie didn't even have to use his full strength, so a dragon claw easily smashed into his face. His face contorted, and he was sent flying. As he flew backward, he glared angrily at Lin Ling. I, Lin Ling, will gladly accept your gift. Lin Ling didn't stop. Kill him. Looking back at Han Xie, he had already reached the stone tablet. The evil ghost appeared in his right hand, and then he ruthlessly slapped it into the record of the 8 gods. The record of the 8 gods contained the will of worry. This was a will that was sealed in the stone tablet, so it had no consciousness, but it could be devoured by other wills. Originally, the evil ghost had wanted to devour it, but it was cautious, so it slowly comprehended it. After all, it did not expect Lin Ling to bring the giant ghost to this island. Now that the giant ghost had entered the stone tablet, it had no other choice but to fight with all its might. Giant ghost, it's up to you. Lin Ling knew that he could not hold on to the stone tablet, so the battle inside the stone tablet depended on the giant ghost. Lin Ling, give me your life. A transparent palm slapped down. Han Xie had made his move. This person had 2 innate talents, and his divine embryo had reached the 8th rank. He was about to have the divine embryo of a mid-god. In addition, his cultivation realm was that of a low god, and now he had unleashed all his strength to kill Lin Ling here. In addition to this expert, Lily Empress was also eyeing Lin Ling covetously, so now he was facing an ambush from all sides. Bang bang bang. Lin Ling's sword collided with Han Xie, and his heart was immediately affected, beating 10 billion times in an instant. His heart being affected by Han Xie had undoubtedly weakened Lin Ling's battle strength. Almost at the same time, 6 figures arrived on black lotuses. At a closer look, these 6 figures were all wearing different clothes, but they all looked the same. It was Lily Empress. Now she had activated all 6 divine embryos, and she did not hide her cultivation anymore. She had unsealed her seal and reached the early stage of a low god. She obviously knew that if she did not use all her strength when facing a formidable enemy like Lin Ling, it would be underestimating Lin Ling and hurting herself. Rumble. Lin Ling was affected by Han Xie's heart and could not move at all. When Lily Empress's powerful attack arrived, his body immediately trembled, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Rumble! Deafening noises were constantly heard, and the entire hall seemed to be about to collapse. So powerful. Does two new gods have to join forces to suppress Lin Ling? The surrounding experts looked solemn as they searched for a fatal blow. Holy Spirit, let me help you. The more powerful people also attacked, and powerful divine energy blasted Lin Ling's body. Lin Ling was suppressed by Han Xie and Lily Empress, and now he was powerless to resist. Rumble! Under countless shocked gazes, Lin Ling's body exploded and turned into countless pieces of black flesh and blood. He's dead. This scene caused everyone's pupils to dilate. Lin Ling, one of the 8 new gods of the current generation, had fallen. Chapter 4307. Roar. At this moment, 3 gods seemed to have appeared behind Lin Ling. They were the Luai's god with his sharp fangs, the human king's Dharma idol that could control the world, and the Vajra with his ferocious eyes. Bang! Lin Ling took a step forward, and the ground of the hall shook like waves. This was the power of 500,000 worlds, and 1,500 strands of divine energy. This did not include Lin Ling's Luai's true form, great heavenly flame, and Bodhi-proof divine technique. Swoosh! Lin Ling's speed was very fast. He pounced on the crowd and grabbed with his hand. It was like the arm of a Vajra, and it carried the domineering power of lightning and flames. Stop him! Those people's expressions changed drastically. Lin Ling's speed was too fast. He appeared in front of them in the blink of an eye. Therefore, they resisted with all their might. However, Lin Ling's hand was simple and violent. It was like the hand of a Buddha. When it swept past, all the attacks were destroyed. Moreover, those experts were also turned into meat paste. So powerful. The people on the other side were so frightened that their eyes trembled. The new god Lin Ling was indeed terrifying. Lin Ling, hand over your life. However, at this moment, a transparent figure appeared behind Lin Ling. It was like a stream of water, but also like a crystal. Then, a palm mixed with ferocious divine energy pressed down. It was Han Xie. However, Lin Ling did not even look behind him. His huge palm fiercely slapped out. Boom! At the moment of collision, the unstoppable force actually turned all the people near it into dust. So powerful. How is this possible? I have the strength of an early-stage lower deity. In the air, Han Xie maintained his posture of striking out with his palm. However, his pupils were also trembling. It was because he had already passed the most difficult great tribulation of the martial god realm. He was now a true deity. His world essence had already transformed into divine origin. However, such a vast amount of power was actually unable to injure Lin Ling. Of course, this was secondary. Most importantly, he discovered that his 10 billion heartbeats could not affect Lin Ling at all. He has 7 dantians. In addition to his powerful physical body, he has the strongest physical body in the 9 prefectures. Naturally, you won't be able to hurt him. At this moment, Lily Empress's voice drifted over. Looking at her expression, it was incomparably dignified. Lin Ling's 7 dantians and 7 divine embryos. Lily Empress also had 6 dantians and 6 divine embryos. Clearly, she was weaker than Lin Ling. Her only advantage was that her cultivation level was higher than Lin Ling's. However, Lin Ling's methods were incomparably powerful, and this made up for the gap between them. Physical body. I don't believe that your body can withstand my 100 billion heartbeats. Han Xie let out a roar. Both of his palms struck out in a frenzy. With every strike, the heartbeat of those people increased. Lord Sacred Spirit, don't. Lin Ling was not affected, but many people in the hall were. They held their hearts and cried out in pain. However, Han Xie ignored them. Thump thump thump. In the end, their hearts exploded one by one, and they died completely. Looking at Han Xie again, the heartbeat of his body had become tangible. It was like a circular sound wave that rippled through the entire hall. 100 billion heartbeats. Lin Ling's eyes were cold. He sensed that his heart was also beginning to lose control. However, he did not stop. Instead, he killed everyone around him. He killed as many as he could to prevent those people from launching a sneak attack. 100 billion heartbeats is just an effect. Seeing Lin Ling crazily killing people, Lily Empress's eyes shone with a sharp light. Han Xie, on the other hand, was infuriated when he saw that Lin Ling was still killing people, as if he didn't see him even in his divine fetus. Because in a short period of time, the originally packed hall was now left with only a dozen people. No matter what kind of powerhouse they were, even the dragon spirit, they could not withstand a single blow from Lin Ling. Moreover, they also sensed that outside the underground palace, the turmoil was even more terrifying. They feared that no one would come here in the near future. This meant that if they wanted to kill Lin Ling, it would depend on them. Lin Ling, you must die today. Thus Lily Empress no longer held back. She activated all 6 divine embryos. A black coiling dragon rushed out, followed by the cry of a phoenix. Then, a black roc flapped its wings and floated behind Lily Empress. And this was not the end. A snake slithered out, supporting Lily Empress. Below this snake, black water flooded out, and a massive black turtle shell slowly emerged. Roar! Finally, a black qilin appeared. Looking at its bloodline, it was not much weaker than a baby qilin. 6 divine beasts. These divine beasts all had extraordinary origins. They were obtained from the god realm, and were sealed in Lily Empress's dantian. Among the 6 divine beasts, Lily Empress was like a goddess. Her body shone with divine light, incomparably resplendent. Under this divine light, the white light around the hall began to melt like ice water. Lily Empress actually has 6 divine embryos. As expected of the divine spirit, that can move even the great god of Spirit Nation. The remaining dozen or so people looked at the colored glaze empress with reverence and worship in their eyes. Han Xie, although your divine heart cannot kill him, it can restrain him. Now continue to activate your divine embryos. I will kill him. Colored glaze empress also let out a clear and cold voice. Her eyes had unknowingly turned black. Although those long and narrow eyes were very beautiful, there was also a trace of ruthlessness in them. Han Xie, need your help? Han Xie was still activating 100 billion heartbeats. After hearing Lily Empress's words, he snorted in disdain. I know you are not convinced by me, but Lin Ling is more important. Think about it. He has 7 dantians and 7 divine embryos. If he reaches the realm of a lower god, will you still have a place to stand? In front of the great god of Spirit Nation. Lord Ning has mentioned Lin Ling many times, but never you. Are you willing to accept this? Lily Empress said indifferently. Her voice had a magical power that seemed to affect Han Xie. What a joke! Lily Empress, I know what you are thinking. But let me tell you, do you think that I have done my best? In fact, Lord Ning has already taught me a technique that can kill Lin Ling in one blow. It's just that I have not used it yet. Hearing this, Han Xie laughed loudly. However, his eyes were fixed on Lin Ling. Of course, you are right. This new great god is not to be underestimated. We should eliminate him completely. Let's work together. He had obviously guessed that outside the island, it must be a mess right now. If the great god of Spirit Nation were to know that Lin Ling had single-handedly turned the entire island upside down, he might not kill Lin Ling. In fact, he might even praise Lin Ling even more. Therefore, Han Xie wanted Lin Ling dead. He was even willing to join forces with Lily Empress. 100 billion heartbeats. Chapter 4308. Bang bang bang. Once the trillion heartbeats were unleashed, the remaining dozen or so people were unable to withstand it. This was because their hearts were beating so fast that they could explode at any moment. Furthermore, under the attacks of Han Xie and Lily Empress, the white light in the Great Hall was finally unable to hold on any longer. It continued to fade, and was about to disappear at any moment. This also showed how powerful Han Xie and Lily Empress were. After all, these white lights were created by the great gods of the Spirit Kingdom. How could ordinary people break through them? Brother Xiaoyao, I was wrong back then. However, every man for himself, so don't blame me. With the suppression of 1 trillion heartbeats, Lily Empress looked at Lin Ling. There was an additional tenderness deep within her eyes. The memories of the little valley back then seemed to flow in her mind. At that time, She listened to Li Xiaoyao's stories every day. He told her about the wonders of the outside world. She loved those days very much. Under the maple tree in the ancient forest, she watched her beloved man tell her everything in a low voice. However, when she walked out of the small valley, she realized that the outside world was so exciting. She also had her own dream. Just like Li Xiaoyao said, how could a person not have a dream? Therefore, for the sake of her dream, she wanted Li Xiaoyao dead. She stretched out her hand and gently drew a circle before her. The circle floated before her, but there was a mysterious force coming from it. This force was like smoke, and the moment it floated out, a dangerous aura appeared. The aura of the divine tribulation from the martial god realm to the divine realm. Could it be that Luli Empress can control such a divine tribulation? The powerhouses in the shattered temple were not only resisting Han Xie's fatal heartbeat technique, but they also sensed the dangerous aura emanating from Luli Empress. In their eyes, the current Luli Empress seemed to have come from the era of the gods. Her every move, every frown, and every smile were so natural, and actually carried the rhythm of the Grand Tao. Hurry up and get out of the hall. After a short moment, an old man finally shouted anxiously, because he had a feeling that if they didn't leave now, then all of them would die here. Boom, boom. They attacked the receding white light as if they had gone mad. Lin Ling stood there quietly. Behind him, King Kong, Thunder Lock, and Sovereign Personage provided Lin Ling with an endless stream of energy. However, this energy was not enough to withstand the mysterious energy released by Luli Empress. Lin Ling could feel that this energy was not enough to resist, because it was the steps of the gods. Luli Empress actually controlled the steps of God. In the age of the gods, this was a power that even intermediate gods might not be able to control. After so many years, your strength has improved greatly. The tyrannical song sword appeared in Lin Ling's hand as he spoke indifferently. My father and brother died at your hands, but I don't want to avenge them, not at all. If there is a chance, I don't want to kill you, but I know that you, Li Xiaoyao, will come to kill me. So I must become stronger and surpass the 4 gods. Because I want to become the god of the 9 prefectures, I must kill you. Luli Empress's voice was very soft, but it revealed her ambition. God of the 9 prefectures, you think too simply of this world. Lin Ling gently stroked the tyrannical song sword, as if he was caressing his most beloved person. His tone was also filled with sarcasm. God of the 9 prefectures? Luli Empress did not know that in a certain void, there were even more gods. Any one of them was enough to sweep through the entire 9 prefectures. To them, the gods of the 9 prefectures were like ants. Li Xiaoyao, all your strength is this second stage innate talent fusion. Now the power that I want to use is not something you can resist. Luli Empress ignored Lin Ling's words. In her hand, a purple ball of light appeared. It did not seem big, but it emitted a godly power that could crush one's soul. In the end, she looked at Lin Ling with a complicated expression. Her face turned cold. She wanted to completely erase this man who had countless ties with her. Ancient divine technique, Qing Ming incantation. She suddenly clenched her fist, as if she had released some kind of taboo. The purple ball of light in her hand turned into green smoke, but it quietly flew towards the sky. Walala! In the sky above the island, a taboo aura descended. Now the island was in a state of panic. The 9 prefectures were in a mess, and the Coolwood Palace was completely destroyed. In the streets and alleys, people looked up at the sky because there were 2 great gods clashing. But now, the 2 gods had stopped fighting, and were looking at the sky. They were looking at the sky above the underground palace. It's Luli Empress's ancient divine technique. A scholarly man muttered to himself. Then he looked at the old man opposite him and said, to be able to make Luli Empress use such a method, he should be Lin Ling. That's right. It's Lin Ling. The old man opposite him nodded, but the corners of his eyes were fixed on the taboo aura in the sky, and there was a trace of worry in his eyes. That was because he sensed that it was the steps of God. He didn't know if Lin Ling could withstand it. Treasure God, let's fight again. The man retracted his gaze, looked at the old man and pounced. Rumble. The 2 of them attacked and destroyed the island once again. At the same time, above the underground palace, a green thunderbolt shot down. It carried a wisp of destructive aura, as if it was a divine tribulation. Bang! The moment it fell, the underground palace was penetrated. Then the green thunderbolt, as thick as a water bucket, blasted towards Lin Ling. What a powerful divine technique! Lin Ling's pupils constricted, and he activated it with all his strength. He also wanted to see how powerful this ancient divine technique was. Boom! The green thunderbolt, as thick as a water bucket, immediately shook Lin Ling's body when it collided with the tyrant's singing sword. His strength couldn't withstand the impact of the green thunderbolt. When Luli Empress saw that Lin Ling, who was in midair, wasn't killed by the attack, her heart trembled. However, her expression became even colder. Her hands continuously formed complicated seals, and she muttered. Then she pointed to the sky and said, "Dark Spirit Incantation." This ancient divine technique was a powerful curse that Eugene had obtained in the realm of the gods. According to legend, it was created by an ancient deity, and it was extremely powerful. Later, Eugene gave it to her, and it was the only thing she could use to defeat Lin Ling. This was because she knew that the power of this ancient divine technique came from ancient times, and it was a power that surpassed the power of the gods. Boom! Above the sky, another wave of power blasted down. It was like a gust of wind, and wherever it passed, everything turned into dust. Dark Spirit Incantation. Everything under the sky is gray. When the ancient gust of wind blew, Lin Ling's body trembled. He felt a domineering power tearing his body apart. Even with his diamond body, he couldn't withstand it. Ah! Lin Ling roared, and the three kings behind him gathered again to resist the destructive gust of wind. Has Lin Ling's physical strength really reached the stage of invincibility? Chapter 4309. Never had he Han Xie imagined that Lin Ling was actually formidable to such an extent. Lin Ling, you're already struggling on your deathbed. Ancient Theurgy Calming Incantation, Cleansing Altar Incantation, House Suppressing Incantation. Looking at the glazed Empress again, her eyes were also red. The 6 divine beasts around her were also roaring at the sky. She needed these 6 divine beasts to sacrifice to the heavens in order to use this ancient divine technique. Only then could she borrow this ancient power from the hands of the deceased god. As she silently chanted the incantation, her aura was increasing rapidly. Waves of divine wind blew out from her body. The fierce wind and green lightning above Lin Ling's had also strangely disappeared at this moment. However, the inside of the main hall was terrifying. Leave this place. The people in the main hall, and Han Xie had all broken the walls, and rushed out of the main hall. After all, the white light had completely faded, and could no longer stop them. The reason why they wanted to leave was because they sensed that an even more terrifying taboo was about to erupt. However, before they left, they took a deep look at Lin Ling. Their eyes were filled with fear. This was because Lin Ling had been fighting for so long, but he had not fallen. Moreover, facing Luli Empress's final attack, Lin Ling did not run away. Instead, he seemed to want to fight with all his strength. Both of them are top-notch experts in the 9 prefectures. They have a grudge between them. No wonder Lin Ling did not run away. I think he also wants to settle that grudge and settle it once and for all. Let's leave quickly. I can feel that suffocating power. They rushed out of the main hall, and then drifted far away. However, their eyes were still fixed in the direction of the underground palace. They saw that there was a big hole in the ceiling of the underground palace. Fierce wind kept blowing in, as if it was blowing away the bond between Lin Ling and Luli Empress for thousands of generations. At this moment, the powerhouses near the underground palace were all staring at the underground palace. They knew what was going on now, so they were waiting for everything to happen. Curse of 3. But at this moment, a cold voice finally sounded from the underground palace, and it actually carried a wisp of irresistible majesty. Rumble! Dark clouds loomed over the sky, covering the firmament. 3 incomparably terrifying forces fell from the sky like fireballs. Upon closer inspection, these were no longer forces. They were simply 3 ancient gods. These 3 forces were wind, lightning, and fire. These ancient powers were so strong that they could destroy the physical body, extinguish the soul, and destroy the divine embryo. Goodbye Li Xiaoyao. Under the bombardment of the three forces, Luli Empress slowly floated out of the underground palace under the escort of the 6 divine beasts. Boom! Boom! The underground palace began to shake. But what shocked everyone was that even under the pressure of such a terrifying force, the underground palace was not destroyed. Instead, there was a dazzling light that constantly gushed out from the holes in the underground palace, making it seem as if the underground palace had turned into a furnace. What a dazzling light! That power is only effective against living creatures. A powerhouse felt a sense of fear in his heart. Even though he was far away, he could still feel the majesty that could kill everything. Looking at the underground palace again, Lin Ling raised his sword to resist. He realized that the divine steps used by Luli Empress were very strange. It seemed to have the power of the great Tao. This was because the divine steps were ineffective against inanimate objects, but only against living creatures. Legend has it that the great Tao comes from the mouth of a deity. With the silent recitation of the incantation, the heavens and earth would change. This must be the power. Lin Ling's eyes flickered. Now, he could choose to fuse the stage 3 innate talent, or activate the divine steps of wisdom. But he didn't do so, because he knew that today's battle in the spirit kingdom wouldn't end so quickly. Old friend, let's fight it together. Suddenly, Lin Ling said to Tyrannical Singer Sword. Ever since Tyrannical Singer Sword had obtained a broken sword in the 9th mountain of God Miao's true inheritance, coupled with Lin Ling's bitter cultivation in the eternal kingdom, all of his divine power had been activated. However, Lin Ling's strength was too strong, so Tyrannical Singer Sword's divine power was of little value. But Lin Ling knew that Tyrannical Singer Sword wasn't that simple. God Emperor Zhonggang had once said that the owner of the scabbard was very strong and terrifying. Now, Lin Ling wanted to use this pressure to activate the hidden power of Tyrannical Singer Sword. Destroy and establish. Without destruction, how could one establish? Rumble. In the sky, the three forces continued to suppress Lin Ling, blasting him towards the ground. Finally, he broke through the ground, as if he wanted to reach the center of the island, and even penetrate the island. Rumble. The entire island was shaking violently, which made everyone's eyes tremble. As for Luli Empress and Han Xia, their faces were solemn. They didn't expect Lin Ling to be so tenacious. Sword, wake up! Lin Ling still maintained his posture with his sword in front of him, as he continued to roar. As he resisted with all his strength, although the powerful force above his head was blocked by Tyrannical Singer Sword, the wind and flames continued to attack Lin Ling's body. Lin Ling's skin cracked, and was dripping with blood. Cracks also appeared on his diamond body. The Human King and Thunder Lock were extremely dim. Boom! As he continued to fall, Lin Ling suddenly realized that he had been rushed into a mysterious void. It was pitch black like a starry sky. A man was tied there by a chain that pierced through his body. The chain was pure white, and had a large number of runes flashing on it. It was very mysterious. God Emperor Zhonggang. Lin Ling's eyes swept across the room, and he was shocked. It's you! The man opened his eyes and instantly recognized Lin Ling, because he had met Lin Ling once in Starry Sky Forest. Beside him, there was a gray skeleton that was half the height of a human sitting there. However, when it saw Lin Ling, the skeleton lifted its head and revealed a human-like surprise. It was the Skeleton King that Lin Ling had come into contact with in Starry Sky Forest. However, it was dispirited and seemed to be trapped. Ka. It immediately made a strange sound at the man. You are Lin Ling, right? If you want the sword to awaken, you need a sea of blood as a sacrifice to the sword. When the man heard what the skeleton said, he seemed to know that Lin Ling was in a difficult situation. Hence, he immediately said, let go of the murderous intent that you have suppressed for many years. Murderous intent. Lin Ling's eyes dilated. He didn't know how many people he had killed in his life. However, after going to the final world, the murderous intent was gradually suppressed and controlled by him. Now he wanted to let go of the desire to kill. Kill as you wish. That is the sword that kills demons. If you want to kill someone, kill yourself first. The man's voice floated again, and Lin Ling seemed to understand something. Kill himself first. Lin Ling's eyes flashed with madness. He suddenly withdrew his sword and stabbed tyrannical Singer sword into his body. Swoosh. Chapter 43:10. Killing was killing, and it was also the end. But at some point the end was also the birth. Only by killing oneself could the killing path be born. Beneath the island, a sea of blood was spreading, and the space had already turned into a blood-red color. Within it, a figure was bent over with his hands spread out. His entire body was trembling, and he was letting out low and deep sounds like that of a demonic beast. Lin Ling sensed that the rolling sea of blood had drowned his entire body and soul, leaving only killing in his world. Beside him, the blood-red tyrannical song sword was also trembling, releasing a terrifying desire to kill the world. As for the sword hilt, it was now flowing with the water of the sea of blood. At this moment, the Demon Slayer sword seemed to have awakened. Demon Slayer. In the distance, God Emperor Zhonggang also looked at this scene solemnly. It was as if he had returned to the era of the gods, and saw the lunatic who made the ghosts and gods cry. That lunatic had once killed billions of gods in the era of the gods. In the end, an ancient almighty took action, and his head was cut off by a divine sword the size of a willow leaf. Lin Ling, remember, kill for what? Suddenly, God Emperor Zhonggang also shouted. He was afraid that Lin Ling would be drowned in killing intent. In the rolling sea of blood, a pitch-black figure was still roaring. Above the sea of blood, three forces pressed down, but they were blocked by the sea of blood. Kill for what? As Lin Ling roared, he suddenly let out a suspicious voice. In his mind, which was occupied by the sea of blood, faces also appeared. Yu and Yuer, Ancestor Taiyan, Emonienchen, Linny, Di Shirtian. There were too many. I don't kill for the world. I only kill for my family and friends. Lin Ling finally raised his head. At this moment, the sword hilt hanging behind him quietly floated out a black shadow. It was a burly old man, his long hair scattered like wild grass. He was pitch black, as if he came from the underworld. This time, the old man was no longer headless. The ancient god language suddenly floated out of Lin Ling's mouth, causing God Emperor Zhonggang's eyes to tremble. This was because this was no longer Lin Ling's voice. It was the voice of the devil that had disappeared for countless years. Grim demon, wake up! Emperor God Zhonggang said to Little Skeleton instinctively. Then he revealed a smile. Xiutua. At this moment, a blood sword slashed out. Rumble. In the sky, the three ancient divine techniques were slashed apart by a blood-red ray of light. The ray of light shot into the sky, and then a roiling sea of blood gushed out from the ground. Within the sea of blood, a pitch-black figure followed the sea of blood and silently stepped into the sky. The steps of murder. Looking at Lin Ling, who was leaving, Emperor God Zhonggang's eyes continued to tremble. This was because he knew that it was difficult to awaken the sword of Grim Demon. After Grim Demon had fallen, many people in the era of gods had obtained his sword hilt. However, they didn't awaken the sword in the end. Instead, they were killed by the sword. This was because if one didn't want to be killed by the sword, the only way was to find the broken sword. However, the broken sword had been scattered all over the world. How could one find it in a short period of time? Only by finding the broken sword of Grim Demon and killing himself could he resolve the killing. Lin Ling, you have successfully resolved the killing. Looking at the roiling sea of blood rushing towards the island, Emperor God Zhonggang finally knew that the young man he had seen back then had also stepped into the era of gods. At this moment, the island was like hell on earth. On the ground, there were continuous roars. Flames and smoke shot into the sky. From afar, the entire ground was filled with holes, as though it was the remains of a war between gods. In the sky, two huge statues stood tall in the sky. When they collided, there was an intense storm. It was as though two worlds were colliding. Countless experts of the spirit kingdom had fallen because of this. However, near the underground palace, Everyone looked at the underground palace. Their faces were solemn as cold sweat dripped down their foreheads. However, they couldn't care less about wiping their sweat. Instead, they swallowed their saliva with difficulty. Lin Ling, is he dead? Under the deafening heaven and earth, an old voice, mixed with disbelief, quietly floated out. Hong. However, just as these words were spoken, a bloody light shot into the sky from the broken ceiling of the underground palace. It cut the forbidden power in the sky into two halves. Pop, pop, pop. Next, an endless sea of blood spread out, causing the underground palace to erupt like a volcano. However, it was a sea of blood that spewed out. He's not dead. Almost instantly, countless experts let out a loud roar. Han Xie and Lily Empress's pupils were trembling. Their faces were pale as they kept shaking their heads. Ancient divine skills can't kill him. Lily Empress finally realized how terrifying Lin Ling was. She knew that if she had fought with Lin Ling last time, she would have died without a doubt. Trial taker Lin Ling, he's not dead. Soon after, cries of panic rose in everyone's hearts like a plague, spreading to the entire island. Trial taker Lin Ling. On the majestic island, many people heard that voice. Their hearts felt as though they had been struck by lightning. At this point, they naturally knew who was so arrogant and dared to stir up a storm on the island. However, they originally thought that with Lin Ling's strength alone, it was impossible for him to fight against the entire spirit kingdom. Only now did they realize that Lin Ling could become a new god, a giant in the 9 states. He indeed had the ability. Lin Ling. On the chaotic street, a man looked at the distant sky in shock. He was Maple. Brother, this Lin Ling is so scary. He's like a living god. This is the first time our spirit kingdom has encountered such a shocking invasion. Next to the man, a young man said with a pale face. We are no longer people of the spirit kingdom. Now, let's take advantage of the commotion caused by Lin Ling and leave this place. Maple looked at the sky again, then strode away. Huayin Fourth Association. However, just as they started to move, an old and hoarse voice sounded in the underground palace and spread throughout the island. Even the battle between the two gods in the sky stopped and looked deeply at the underground palace. The pupils of one of the scholarly men were condensing. The old man smiled. He was naturally treasure god Nanwufingyu. Now that he saw that Lin Ling was fine, he could finally put down the boulder in his heart. Crash! After that voice, a sword slash appeared in the underground palace. A circular sword slash, with the main hall as the center, followed the horizon and cut through everything. The underground palace was cut open by the sword. The 99 alley was cut open by the sword. Rumble! The entire island shook, as if a demon god had emerged from the earth. Lin Ling, how can you be so powerful? Hurry up and crouch down, don't get cut by the sword. Chapter 43:11. In the sky, Lily Empress and Han Xie's pupils trembled a few more times as fear spread in their hearts. Whoosh! As if the roof of the underground palace had been lifted, a rolling sea of blood began to flow out and drown the earth. In the rolling sea of blood, a figure with long hair fluttering in the wind slowly floated up. This person was dressed in blood red and held a blood-red sword in his hand. His entire body was filled with dense killing intent. The moment he appeared, he affected the hearts of thousands of warriors in the spirit kingdom. Lin Ling. Yes. Everyone looked up with trembling pupils. Lin Ling. Yes. Lily Empress and Han Xie also swallowed with difficulty. From Lin Ling's body, they felt a power that surpassed the power of gods. Demon Slayer. Yes. Lord Ning and Treasure God Nanwufingyu said at the same time. I didn't expect that the Demon Slayer sword would be taken by him. Moreover, he awakened the sword. You should know that even in the era of gods, no one could awaken the sword. Lord Ning said with surprise. He didn't know that Lin Ling had been collecting broken swords for thousands of years. It was done in a day. This guy, don't let the killing intent invade you. Yes, Treasure God Nanwufingyu said with some worry. Xiao mo ho. Yes. At this time Lin Ling, who was above the sea of blood, had a flash in his eyes. A surge of killing intent burst out, and turned into a sword that slashed towards the earth. Rumble! A huge trench was cut in the earth. Above it, a blood-red sword wave rushed towards the crowd like 10,000 horses galloping. Oh my God! Yes! Seeing the huge blood-red sword wave, everyone was so scared that their bodies trembled, and they almost forgot to run. However, before they could react, the sword slashed them in half. Their blood seemed to be sucked into the sea of blood below Lin Ling. Kill! Seeing this, Wuxia also roared angrily, and activated 1,000,000,000,000 heartbeats to suppress Lin Ling. Sound waves of heartbeats surged out like ripples, but just as they were about to reach Lin Ling slashed out with his sword. A blood-red sword wave appeared and actually cut the sound waves into two. Furthermore, the sword wave did not stop and slashed towards Wuxia. Heart of God. At the critical moment, a crystal-like heart appeared in Wuxia's hand, and he slapped it hard. Rumble! A deafening sound rang out as the sword wave was blocked. However, Wuxia also spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated. Looking at the crystal heart in his hand, there was a hair-sized sword wound on it. What a terrifying sword! What kind of power is this? Wuxia's heart trembled, and his gaze towards Lin Ling became even more fearful. The steps of God. And it's probably related to killing. Because killing is tyrannical, these steps of God are also the most ferocious. Not far away, Lily Empress seemed to have noticed something. However, killing is also a double-edged sword. It can kill the enemy, but it can also kill the master. Lin Ling won't be able to control this power for long. Lin Ling, we haven't seen each other for many years. Now that we meet again, are you going to destroy my spirit nation? At this moment, a huge stone statue appeared in the sky and looked down at Lin Ling majestically. He was Lord Ning. Lin Ling also raised his head slightly and looked indifferently at the godlike expert. He did not say a word. He raised the sword in his hand and looked at Lord Ning as he slashed with his sword. Suapuku. This sword was very terrifying, as it slashed out a rolling sea of blood, because in the eyes of countless people, the sword turned into a sea of blood and rushed towards Lord Ning. Winter Plum. The huge stone statue was like a god. It stretched out its palm and looked down at the sea of blood rushing up from the ground and pressed down. The power of winter burst out and froze the sea of blood. From afar, the scene was very majestic because a huge sea of blood rushed into the sky. But now it was completely frozen. Everything was so lifelike. What a powerful divine staircase. However, although Lord Ning easily blocked Lin Ling's sword, he also let out a dignified voice. Lin Ling, your opponent is not me, and my opponent is not you. Lord Ning looked at treasure god Nanwufingyu in the distance, and knew that this peak god was his opponent. Of course, he didn't expect that the current spirit nation would almost be turned upside down, because of Lin Ling and treasure god Nanwufingyu. 1,000,000 martial gods, move out. Then, Lord Ning let out a low voice, as if he was giving the order of a god. As he spoke, a large number of powerful auras soared into the sky from all directions of the island. Then, rays of light formed the aura of divine soldiers and divine generals, and they rushed toward the underground palace with great momentum. 1,000,000 martial gods. These martial gods were all dragon spirits. Looking at the horizon, the sky was filled with experts like locusts. 1,000,000 martial gods are here too. Wuxia's expression changed greatly, because he already knew that the spirit nation wasn't as simple as it looked. In the distant continent, there were countless experts. These experts were the group of people that the spirit nation took away when they first arrived in the void of the 9 states tens of thousands of years ago. Now that tens of thousands of years had passed, the strength of those experts had reached an unknown level. Thinking about it, the 1,000,000 martial gods were just a group of them. Lin Ling is going to fight against 1,000,000 martial gods. On the ground, the experts of the spirit nation were also trembling. One person against 1,000,000 martial gods. In the world other than Lin Ling, who else could be so domineering? The name of Lin Ling, one of the 8 new gods of the 9 states, was now deeply engraved in their hearts. Look in all directions and chant. However, seeing the arrival of 1,000,000 martial gods, Lin Ling wasn't afraid. Instead, He stepped on the sea of blood, held his sword diagonally, and attacked. Kill! 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 Rumble! The group of martial gods closest to Lin Ling began to receive Lin Ling's Blood Sea sword. The Blood Sea was a murderous aura. Therefore, even if they unleashed their full strength, they couldn't stop the impact of the Blood Sea and were all killed. With this attack, 30,000 peak martial gods had fallen. However, this was just an appetizer before the slaughter. Next, the Blood Sea drowned the 1 million martial gods, and a figure began to kill wildly. This was because Lin Ling knew that before the giant ghost appeared, he couldn't retreat. He could only kill 1 million martial gods. He can kill them all. On the ground, looking at the falling corpses and the Blood Sea that was filled with murderous aura, everyone held their breaths and couldn't even speak properly. Time flew by just like that. 1 million lives kept disappearing and merging into the Blood Sea. In the end, the murderous aura of the Blood Sea became 100 times stronger than before. This guy is really going to kill to stop killing. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.